Hello, horror lover. Are you ready for a long night of nightmares? Before we begin, I want to ask you to subscribe to the channel, and especially leave a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I'd love to know. Click the like button, all of this because the propeller plane's engine sputtered as it descended towards the small airstrip nestled in the heart of Alaska's Tongass National Forest. I peered out the window, my breath fogging the glass as I took in the endless sea of green below. Excitement coursed through my veins, mixing with the lingering unease from the turbulent flight. First time in Alaska, son? The pilot's gruff voice crackled through my headset. I nodded, unable to tear my eyes away from the landscape. Yes, sir. I'm here to study the forest biodiversity. The pilot chuckled. Well, you picked one hell of a place for it. Tongass is like nothing you've ever seen before. Just remember, out here, nature's always got the upper hand. If only I had known then how prophetic those words would become. As the plane touched down on the bumpy airstrip, I gathered my belongings, a backpack full of scientific equipment, a duffel bag with clothes and supplies, and my trusty field journal. The pilot helped me unload my gear, then gave me a firm handshake. Good luck out there, Dr. Carlson. Radio if you need anything, and watch out for the bears. With a final wave, he climbed back into the cockpit and took off, leaving me alone in the vast wilderness. I shouldered my backpack and began the hike to my designated campsite. The forest loomed around me, ancient trees stretching towards the sky, their branches forming a cathedral-like canopy overhead. The air was crisp and clean, filled with the scent of pine and damp earth. I breathed deeply, savoring the moment. This is it, Ryan, I muttered to myself. Your big chance to make a real contribution to botanical science. After an hour of hiking, I reached the small clearing that would be my home for the next few months. I set up my tent with practiced efficiency, then began unpacking my equipment. As I worked, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every so often, I'd glance over my shoulder, half expecting to see a curious bear or maybe a moose. But there was nothing, just the silent, towering trees. As the sun began to set, I finished setting up camp and decided to take a short walk to familiarize myself with the immediate area. The forest was eerily quiet, lacking the usual chorus of birds and insects I'd expect. I chalked it up to the time of day and continued my exploration. That's when I noticed something odd. In the fading light, some of the trees seemed to have a strange, almost metallic sheen to their bark. I approached one of the affected trees, my scientific curiosity piqued. What the hell? I murmured, running my hand along the trunk. The bark felt normal, but in the dying sunlight it gleamed like polished steel. I made a mental note to examine it more closely in the morning. As darkness fell, I retreated to my tent, excitement for the days ahead making it hard to sleep. The forest seemed to come alive at night, filled with muffled sounds I couldn't quite identify. It was probably just nocturnal animals, I told myself, trying to quiet the growing unease in the pit of my stomach. I must have dozed off eventually because I was jolted awake by a sound I can only describe as a cross between a groan and a squelch. Disoriented, I fumbled for my flashlight and unzipped the tent flap. The beam of light revealed a nightmarish scene. My tent was covered in a thick, viscous red substance that glistened wetly in the artificial light. It looked disturbingly like blood. What in God's name? I whispered, my heart pounding in my chest. I cautiously stepped out of the tent, my boots squelching in the red ooze that now covered the ground. The substance seemed to be everywhere, dripping from leaves and pooling around the bases of trees. Panic began to set in as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. Had there been some kind of animal attack? A bizarre weather phenomenon? My scientific mind raced through possibilities, each more unlikely than the last. I approached the nearest tree, the same one I had noticed earlier with the metallic sheen. With trembling hands, I reached out and touched the trunk. The reaction was immediate and horrifying. The bark seemed to split beneath my fingers, and a thick stream of red liquid began to ooze out. It was as if the tree itself was bleeding. I jerked my hand back with a strangled cry, staring in disbelief at my red-stained fingers. "This can't be happening," I muttered, my voice shaking. This isn't possible. But as I looked around, I saw that it wasn't just this one tree. All around me, the forest was coming alive in the most nightmarish way imaginable. Trees were oozing the red substance, their branches seeming to twist and writhe in the darkness. I stumbled back to my tent, my mind reeling. I needed to call for help, to report this impossible phenomenon. With shaking hands, I grabbed my satellite phone and tried to dial out. Nothing but static. Come on, I pleaded, trying again and again. But each attempt was met with the same result. Static, interspersed with what sounded disturbingly like whispers in an alien tongue. I dropped the useless phone, my panic reaching new heights. I was alone, cut off from the world, in a forest that seemed to be bleeding. The rational part of my mind tried to assert itself, insisting there had to be a logical explanation. But as I watched the red ooze continue to spread, logic seemed very far away. I looked down at my hands, still stained red from touching the tree. No matter how hard I rubbed them against my pants, the stain wouldn't come off. It was as if the forest had marked me, claimed me as its own. A movement in the corner of my eye caught my attention. I swung my flashlight towards it, illuminating a sight that made my blood run cold. On a tree about 50 yards away, there was a growth, a pulsating, alien-looking mass that seemed to writhe with a life of its own. My scientific curiosity warred with my fear. What was happening to this forest? What had I stumbled into? As the first light of dawn began to break, I made a decision. I needed to investigate further. Whatever was happening here was beyond anything known to science, and as terrified as I was, I knew I had a responsibility to understand it. With shaking hands, I reached for my field journal and began to write. Day 1 in Tongass National Forest. The trees are bleeding. God help me, the trees are bleeding, and I don't know why. But I'm going to find out, even if it's the last thing I do. Little did I know then how prophetic those words would prove to be, or how deeply my life would become entwined with the fate of this bleeding forest. As I set out to examine the alien growth, I was taking my first steps on a journey that would change not just my life, but the fate of our entire world. The sun rose over the Tongass National Forest, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold. But even its beautiful light couldn't dispel the horror of what I had witnessed. The adventure I had dreamed of had turned into a nightmare, and it was only just beginning. The morning light did nothing to dispel the nightmare. If anything, it made it worse. The red ooze glistened under the sun like fresh blood, and the forest seemed to pulse with an unnatural life. I stood at the edge of my camp, my heart hammering in my chest. The events of the night before felt like a bad dream, but the evidence was all around me, and on me. My hands were still stained a deep crimson, no matter how much I'd scrubbed them. Okay, Ryan, I muttered to myself, trying to steady my nerves. You're a scientist, act like one. With trembling hands, I reached for the nearest tree. The bark felt warm, almost feverish. As my fingers made contact, a shudder ran through the trunk, and a fresh stream of red liquid began to seep out. Jesus Christ, I whispered, stumbling back. The tree didn't just bleed, it reacted. It was as if the entire forest was alive, aware. And I had a sinking feeling it was aware of me. I needed to document this to try and make sense of it all. I fumbled for my camera, nearly dropping it in my haste. As I raised it to take a picture, a sound stopped me cold. A low, keening wail echoed through the trees, rising in pitch until it was almost a scream. The camera slipped from my nerveless fingers as I clapped my hands over my ears. The cry seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, reverberating through my bones. When it finally stopped, the silence was almost worse. I could hear my own ragged breathing, too loud in the unnatural quiet of the forest. "Hello?" I called out, my voice cracking. "Is anyone there?" No response. Just the soft squelch of liquid dripping from leaves and branches. I needed to get help. This was way beyond my expertise. I turned back to my tent, intent on trying the satellite phone again. But as I moved, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The red stain on my hands had spread. Thin tendrils of crimson were creeping up my wrists, disappearing under my sleeves. No, 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 I muttered, clawing at my skin. But the stain wouldn't budge. If anything, my frantic scratching seemed to make it spread faster. Panic clouded my thoughts. I needed to get out of here, to find help. But even as I thought it, I knew it was impossible. I was miles from civilization, and the forest wouldn't let me leave. I don't know how I knew that, but I did. With a certainty that chilled me to my core, I realized I was trapped. The satellite phone lay where I'd dropped it the night before. I snatched it up, praying for a signal. Static greeted me, along with those same alien whispers I'd heard before. "Please," I begged into the receiver. "If anyone can hear this, I need help. I'm in the Tongass National Forest. Something's wrong with the trees. They're bleeding and I think I'm infected." More static, more whispers. And then, faintly, a voice. But not from the phone. "Rien." I whirled around, the phone clattering to the ground. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice edged with hysteria. "Rien." The voice seemed to come from the trees themselves, a sibilant whisper that made my skin crawl. I backed away, my eyes darting from tree to tree. They all looked menacing now, their branches reaching towards me like grasping fingers. A twig snapped behind me. I spun around and found myself face to face with myself. But it wasn't me. Not really. It was like looking in a warped mirror. This other Ryan's skin was mottled with patches of bark, his eyes a swirling mix of green and red. When he smiled, his teeth were sharp and wooden. "Hello, Ryan," my doppelganger said, his voice a grotesque parody of my own. "We've been waiting for you." I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I tried to run, but my feet were rooted to the spot, literally. I looked down to see tendrils of red snaking around my ankles, burrowing into my skin. "Don't fight it," Not-Me said, stepping closer. "It's better if you don't fight it." "What? What are you?" I managed to choke out. He laughed, a sound like creaking branches. "We are the forest. We are life. And soon, you will be too." I shook my head, trying to deny the impossible sight before me. "This isn't real. It can't be real." "Oh, but it is," Not-Me grinned. "And it's only the beginning." With inhuman speed, he lunged forward, his wooden fingers wrapping around my throat. I gasped, clawing at his hands, feeling splinters dig into my skin. "Join us, Ryan," he hissed. "Become one with the forest." Black spots danced in my vision. I could feel something worming its way into my veins, spreading from his touch. With the last of my strength, I brought my knee up, catching Not-Me in the stomach. He let go with a howl of rage, and I stumbled backward. Without thinking, I turned and ran, crashing through the underbrush. Branches whipped at my face, leaving stinging welts that oozed red. I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs felt like jelly. When I finally stopped, gasping for breath, I realized two things. One, I was hopelessly lost. And two, the corruption was spreading. The red stain had crept past my elbows now, and I could feel it pulsing beneath my skin. Each heartbeat sent a fresh wave of alien sensation through my body. "Think, damn it," I muttered, trying to focus through the haze of pain and fear. "You're a scientist. There has to be an explanation." But what explanation could there be for a bleeding forest? For a monstrous version of myself? For the creeping corruption that was slowly claiming my body? A glint of metal caught my eye. Through a gap in the trees, I could see a plume of smoke rising, and there, nestled in a clearing, was some kind of structure. A research station, maybe. Hope surged through me. Other people. Help. Answers. I stumbled towards the clearing, my movements becoming more labored with each step. The corruption was spreading faster now, tendrils of red creeping up my neck. As I broke through the tree line, I saw it wasn't a research station at all. It was a crater, still smoking from impact, and in the center, half buried in the earth, was what could only be described as a meteor. The trees around the impact site were wrong. Their trunks were twisted into impossible shapes, branches reaching out like tentacles. And at the base of each tree was a pulsating, alien growth. The same growth I'd seen the night before. "Oh God," I whispered, the pieces falling into place. "It's not from here. None of this is from here." The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't some bizarre natural phenomenon. This was an invasion, an alien parasite, using the forest as its host, using me as its host. I staggered towards the crater, drawn by a compulsion I couldn't understand. The meteor pulsed with an inner light, and I could hear whispers emanating from it. Whispers that were becoming clearer with each passing moment. "I can help you." I whirled around, nearly losing my balance. A man in a hazmat suit stood at the edge of the clearing, his face obscured by a reflective visor. Who are you?" I croaked, my voice barely recognizable. "That's not important right now," he said, taking a step forward. "What's important is getting you contained before—" He was cut off as more figures emerged from the forest. All in hazmat suits, all carrying what looked like highly advanced weaponry. "Subject is infected," one of them barked into a radio. "Initiating quarantine protocol." "No," I said, backing away. "No, you don't understand. I need help. I need—" My words dissolved into a scream as a bolt of searing pain shot through my body. I fell to my knees, watching in horror as bark began to form over my hands. The last thing I saw before losing consciousness was the team of hazmat-suited figures advancing on me, weapons raised. As darkness claimed me, one thought echoed through my mind. This is only the beginning. The real horror is yet to come. I awoke to the sterile smell of disinfectant and the steady beep of medical equipment. For a blissful moment, I thought it had all been a nightmare. Then the pain hit me, a deep, throbbing ache that seemed to pulse in time with my heartbeat. "He's awake," a muffled voice said. "Increase the sedative." I tried to open my eyes, but my lids felt like they were weighed down with lead. A cool rush spread through my veins, and I felt myself slipping back into unconsciousness. The next time I came to, I was more alert. I managed to pry my eyes open, blinking against the harsh fluorescent lights. I was in some sort of medical bay, surrounded by beeping machines and IV drips. My arms and legs were restrained, and a quick glance showed that the red stain had spread even further, now covering most of my visible skin. "Good morning, Dr. Carlson," a voice said. I turned my head to see a woman in a hazmat suit standing beside my bed. "I'm Dr. Sarah Liang. How are you feeling?" I tried to speak, but my throat was dry and raw. Dr. Liang held a straw to my lips, and I gratefully sipped some water. "Where am I?" I finally managed to croak out. "You're in a secure facility," she replied, her voice clinical and detached. "We found you at the impact site. Do you remember what happened?" The memories came flooding back. The bleeding trees, my monstrous doppelganger, the alien meteor. I shuddered. "It's real, isn't it?" I whispered. "It wasn't just a hallucination?" Dr. Liang nodded gravely. "I'm afraid so. You've been exposed to an extraterrestrial organism, Dr. Carlson. One we've never encountered before." I looked down at my arms, at the bark-like patches spreading across my skin. Am I turning into one of them?" "We don't know," she admitted. "You're the first human to have direct contact with the organism and survive this long. We're doing everything we can to understand what's happening to you." A cold fear gripped my heart. "How long have I been here?" 3 days, she replied. "We've been keeping you sedated while we run tests." 3 days. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. How far had the infection spread in that time? How much of the forest had been consumed? "The trees," I said urgently. "The whole forest is infected. We need to contain it, to stop it from spreading further." Dr. Liang's expression was unreadable behind her visor. "We're aware of the situation, Dr. Carlson. Containment measures are already in place." Something in her tone made me uneasy. What kind of containment measures? Before she could answer, the door to the medical bay slid open. A man in a military uniform strode in, his face set in a grim expression. "That's enough, Dr. Liang," he barked. "I'll take it from here." Dr. Liang hesitated for a moment, then nodded and left the room. The military man turned to me, his eyes cold and calculating. "Dr. Ryan Carlson," he said, consulting a tablet in his hand. "I'm Colonel Brickman. I'm in charge of this operation." "Operation?" I repeated, a sense of dread growing in the pit of my stomach. "The containment and study of the extraterrestrial threat," Brickman replied. "And right now, you're our most valuable specimen." The way he said specimen made my skin crawl. Or maybe that was just the alien infection. It was getting harder to tell the difference. "I'm not a specimen," I protested. "I'm a victim. I need help, not to be studied like some lab rat." Brickman's laugh was devoid of humor. "I'm afraid you don't have much choice in the matter, Dr. Carlson. You're infected with an organism that could potentially wipe out all life on Earth. Your personal comfort is not our primary concern." As if to emphasize his point, a fresh wave of pain surged through my body. I arched against my restraints, a cry of agony tearing from my throat. "Fascinating," Brickman muttered, making notes on his tablet. "The symbiosis seems to be progressing faster than we anticipated." Through the haze of pain, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A tendril of wood had burst through the skin of my forearm, curling like a newborn branch seeking sunlight. "Oh God," I whimpered. "What's happening to me?" "You're evolving, Dr. Carlson," Brickman said, his eyes gleaming with a mix of fear and scientific curiosity. "The question is, into what?" The pain subsided to a dull throb, and I collapsed back onto the bed, panting. "Please," I begged. "There has to be something you can do. Some way to stop this." Brickman shook his head. "We're scientists, Dr. Carlson. Our job is to observe and understand, not to interfere. You're our best chance at learning how this organism operates, how it changes its host." "I'm not a host," I snarled, a surge of anger giving me strength. "I'm a human being." "For now," Brickman replied coldly. "But for how much longer?" He turned to leave, but paused at the door. "Try to rest, Dr. Carlson. We have a lot of tests to run tomorrow." As the door slid shut behind him, I was left alone with the beeping machines and my own terrifying thoughts. I could feel the alien presence in my mind growing stronger, whispering promises of power and transformation. I must have dozed off at some point because I was jolted awake by a commotion outside my room. Raised voices, the sound of running feet, and then an alarm blaring through the facility. The door to my room burst open, and Dr. Liang rushed in, her hazmat suit splattered with something dark and viscous. "We have to move you," she said urgently, starting to undo my restraints. "It's not safe here anymore." "What's happening?" I asked, wincing as I sat up. The woody tendril on my arm had grown, spiraling around my forearm like a bizarre bracelet. "The infection," she panted, helping me to my feet. "It spread faster than we anticipated. The containment measures, they've failed." A scream echoed down the hallway, abruptly cut off. Dr. Liang flinched. "We don't have much time," she said. "Can you walk?" I nodded, though my legs felt weak and rubbery. As we stepped into the hallway, I saw the full extent of the chaos. The sterile white walls were streaked with the same red substance I'd seen in the forest. In places, wooden growths burst through the floor and ceiling, twisting and writhing as if alive. Which, I realized with a chill, they probably were. We made our way through the facility, Dr. Liang leading me through a maze of corridors. Twice we had to backtrack to avoid groups of panicked staff or areas where the alien growth had completely taken over. "Where are we going?" I gasped, my lungs burning with exertion. "To the secure lab," she replied. "We might be able to synthesize a cure, or at least slow the infection's progress." As we rounded a corner, we came face to face with Colonel Brickman. But he wasn't the cold, calculating man I'd met earlier. His uniform was in tatters. and wooden tendrils burst from his skin in a grotesque parody of veins. "Going somewhere?" he growled, his voice a raspy imitation of human speech. Dr. Liang pushed me behind her, backing away slowly. "Colonel, if you can understand me, we're trying to help. To find a cure." Brickman's laugh was like branches creaking in a storm. "There is no cure," he said, "only evolution. Join us. Become part of something greater." He lunged forward with inhuman speed. Dr. Liang shoved me aside, and Brickman's wooden claws raked across her hazmat suit, tearing it open. "Run!" she screamed at me. "Get to the lab!" I hesitated for a split second, torn between the urge to help and the instinct to survive. But as I watched in horror, tendrils of red began to spread from where Brickman had scratched her, racing across her exposed skin. With a last anguished look, I turned and ran. Behind me, I heard Dr. Liang's screams turn into something inhuman, a sound no human throat should be able to make. I ran through the twisting corridors, my heart pounding in my ears. The infection in my own body seemed to pulse in time with my racing heartbeat, and I could feel it spreading, changing me with every step. Finally, I saw a sign for the secure lab. With a burst of desperate energy, I sprinted towards it. As I reached for the door handle, I caught my reflection in the polished metal surface. My eyes were no longer human. They swirled with green and red, like the heart of an alien forest. And from my scalp, small branches had begun to sprout, a crown of alien flora. As I stared at my transformed visage, a terrible realization dawned on me. There was no cure. There was no going back. The person I had been was gone, consumed by this alien entity. And the most terrifying part? A growing part of me didn't want to go back. It wanted to embrace this change, to become something new and powerful. With trembling hands, I pushed open the lab door. Whatever happened next, whatever I became, one thing was certain. The world as we knew it was ending. And I was patient zero. The secure lab was a scene of controlled chaos. Alarms blared, red emergency lights pulsed, and the acrid smell of smoke hung in the air. Scientists in torn hazmat suits scrambled from station to station, their movements frantic and desperate. As I stumbled through the door, all eyes turned to me. For a moment, there was silence, broken only by the wail of sirens. "My God," someone whispered. "It's Carlson." I could see the fear in their eyes, the revulsion at what I had become. But beneath that, there was something else. Curiosity, scientific fascination. To them, I was no longer human. I was a specimen, a breakthrough, the key to understanding the alien infection that was consuming everything. An older man with steel-gray hair stepped forward, his hazmat suit marked with the name Dr. Emerson. He approached me cautiously, as one might approach a wild animal. "Dr. Carlson," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around us. "Can you understand me?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. The alien presence in my mind was growing stronger, and I feared what might come out if I opened my mouth. Emerson's eyes gleamed with barely contained excitement. "Remarkable. The level of cognitive function you're displaying is unprecedented. We need to run tests immediately." "Tests?" I managed to croak out. My voice sounded wrong, like rustling leaves and creaking wood. "There's no time for tests. The infection is spreading. We need to stop it." Emerson shook his head. "You don't understand, Carlson. We can't stop it. It's too late for that. Our only hope now is to understand it, to find a way to coexist with it." As if to punctuate his words, a tremor ran through the building. In the corner of the lab, a crack appeared in the wall, oozing the same red substance I'd seen in the forest. "Sir," a young scientist called out, her voice trembling. "The containment fields are failing. We have minutes, maybe less." Emerson cursed under his breath. "All right, people. Initiate Protocol Omega. We're abandoning the facility." The lab erupted into motion. Scientists began destroying documents, smashing hard drives, erasing every trace of their research. I grabbed Emerson's arm, ignoring the way he flinched at my touch. "You can't leave. What about the people outside? We have to warn them. Emerson's eyes were cold. I'm sorry, Carlson, but that's not our concern. Our job is to preserve humanity's knowledge, to give the survivors a fighting chance. Survivors? I repeated, a chill running down my spine. What do you mean, survivors? Before Emerson could answer, the crack in the wall widened. With a sound like tearing flesh, a mass of writhing tendrils burst through, reaching into the lab. It's here, someone screamed. Panic erupted. Scientists abandoned their tasks, rushing for the exits. In the chaos, I felt a tugging sensation in my mind. The alien presence was calling to me, urging me towards the growing mass of tendrils. And God help me, part of me wanted to go to it. I stumbled backward, fighting against the pull. No, I muttered. I won't. I'm still human. I'm still me. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. The infection had changed me, was still changing me. With each passing moment, I could feel my humanity slipping away. Emerson appeared at my side, grabbing my arm. Come on, Carlson, we're getting out of here. He dragged me towards a heavy steel door at the back of the lab. As we reached it, he punched a code into a keypad. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a dimly lit tunnel beyond. This will take us to the surface, Emerson explained, pushing me forward. From there we can... His words were cut off by a wet, tearing sound. I turned to see a wooden tendril erupting from his chest, lifting him off his feet. His eyes met mine, wide with shock and pain. Run, he gasped, blood bubbling from his lips. Then the tendril whipped back, pulling him into the writhing mass that had once been the lab. I didn't need to be told twice. I sprinted down the tunnel, my feet pounding against the metal floor. Behind me, I could hear the alien growth advancing, could feel its call growing stronger in my mind. The tunnel seemed endless, twisting and turning through the bowels of the earth. My lungs burned, my muscles screamed, but I didn't dare slow down. I could hear the infection coming, a symphony of tearing metal and alien chittering. Finally, mercifully, I saw light ahead. With a last burst of speed, I burst out of the tunnel and into the open air. The sight that greeted me stole the breath from my lungs. The forest had changed, transformed into something alien and terrifying. The trees were no longer trees, but towering monstrosities of wood and flesh. The ground pulsed with veins of red, and the air was thick with spores that glowed with an otherworldly light. And in the distance, rising above the twisted canopy, was a structure that defied description. It looked like a massive tree, but one made of metal and flesh and pulsing energy. Tendrils of power arced from its crown, reaching into the sky. As I stared in horrified awe, I realized what I was seeing. It wasn't just a structure, it was a beacon, a call to others like it somewhere out in the depths of space. Beautiful, isn't it? I whirled around to find myself face to face with myself. Or rather, the thing that had taken my form back in the forest. But it had changed too. It was more plant than human now, its body a twisted amalgamation of flesh and flora. What is this? I demanded, my voice shaking. What are you doing to our world? My doppelganger smiled, its teeth sharp and wooden. We're not doing anything to your world, Ryan. We're freeing it, evolving it, making it part of something greater. I shook my head, backing away. This isn't evolution, it's destruction. Is it? Notme cocked its head, regarding me curiously. Look at yourself, Ryan. Feel the power growing inside you. You're becoming something more than human, something beautiful. And the worst part was, I could feel the truth in its words. The alien presence in my mind was no longer just a voice. It was a symphony, a chorus of countless minds all linked together. I could feel the forest, could sense every tree, every leaf, every spore floating on the wind. Join us, Ryan, Notme said, extending a hand. Become part of the new world we're creating. For a moment I was tempted. The power, the connection, the sense of purpose. It was intoxicating. But then I thought of the people I'd left behind, of Dr. Liang, of Emerson, of all the others who had died or worse. No, I said, surprised by the strength in my voice. I won't be part of this. I'll find a way to stop you. Not Me's smile faded, replaced by a look of cold fury. Then you will die with the rest of your kind. It lunged at me, wooden claws extended. But something had changed in me during my flight through the tunnel. The infection had spread, yes, but so had my control over it. I raised my hand, and to my shock, the ground beneath Not Me's feet erupted. Tendrils of wood and vine wrapped around its legs, holding it in place. Not Me's eyes widened in surprise. How? I didn't wait for it to finish. I turned and ran, sprinting into the twisted forest. Behind me I could hear Not Me's howls of rage, could feel the forest coming alive around me, but I kept running. I didn't know where I was going, or what I would do when I got there. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. This wasn't over. The war for Earth's future had just begun, and somehow I was at the center of it. As I ran, I could feel the changes continuing inside me. My body was adapting, evolving, becoming something that was neither fully human nor fully alien. And with each step, each breath, each beat of my mutated heart, I made a silent vow. I would find a way to stop this invasion, to save what was left of humanity. And if I couldn't save the world, then by God I would avenge it. The twisted forest swallowed me up, and I disappeared into the heart of the alien world that had once been my home. Days blended into nights as I stumbled through the alien landscape that had once been the Tongass National Forest. Time lost all meaning in this new world of perpetual twilight, where the canopy of twisted branches blotted out the sun, and bioluminescent fungi cast an eerie glow over everything. I was changing faster now. The bark-like patches on my skin had spread, covering most of my body. My hair had fallen out, replaced by a crown of leaves and thin whip-like branches. But worst of all was the hunger, not for food, but for soil, for sunlight, for the very essence of the earth itself. As I trudged through a clearing of what used to be ferns, now a mass of writhing, flesh-like fronds, I heard a sound that stopped me cold. Voices. Human voices. "Check the perimeter again," a gruff male voice ordered. "We can't risk those things finding us." "But sir," a younger voice protested, "we've been here for days. Shouldn't we try to make contact with other survivors? And lead those abominations right to them? No, we stay put until we hear from command." I crouched low, my heart pounding. Humans. Uninfected humans. Part of me yearned to run to them, to feel the comfort of my own kind again. But another part, the alien part, whispered of how easy it would be to infect them, to bring them into the collective. "No," I growled, squeezing my eyes shut. "I'm still me. I'm still human." But was I? Could I risk exposing these people to whatever I had become? Before I could decide, a twig snapped under my foot. The voices immediately went silent. "What was that?" the younger voice whispered. "Shh," the older man hissed. "Jones, check it out." I heard footsteps approaching my position. Panic rose in my throat. I had to run, had to hide, had to... Freeze! A man in tattered military fatigues burst through the undergrowth, assault rifle aimed at my head. His eyes widened as he took in my transformed appearance. "Oh shit." "Jones?" the gruff voice called out. "Report." Jones opened his mouth to respond, but I was faster. With reflexes I didn't know I possessed, I lunged forward, clamping my hand over his mouth. To my horror, I felt tendrils sprouting from my palm, trying to burrow into his skin. "Please," I whispered, fighting against the alien urge to infect. "I don't want to hurt you. I need help." Jones's eyes were wide with terror, but he stopped struggling. Slowly, I removed my hand, the tendrils reluctantly retreating back into my skin. What are you?" he managed to choke out. I began, but was cut off by more voices and crashing undergrowth. "Jones, where are you, damn it?" 3 more soldiers burst into view, weapons raised. For a moment, everyone froze. a tableau of human and alien locked in a standoff. Then the older man I'd heard earlier, a grizzled sergeant with hard eyes, broke the silence. "Open fire!" "No!" Jones shouted, throwing himself between me and his comrades. "Wait, he's not like the others. He can talk." The sergeant's eyes narrowed. "Stand aside, Private. That's an order." But Jones stood his ground. "Sir, with all due respect, if he wanted to hurt us, he could have done it already. I think he might be able to help us." The sergeant considered this for a long moment, his finger never leaving the trigger. Finally, he lowered his weapon slightly. "All right, thing. You got 10 seconds to convince me not to turn you into mulch. Start talking." I swallowed hard, trying to find my voice. When I spoke, it was with a rasping, creaking sound that barely resembled human speech. "My name is Dr. Ryan Carlson. I was a botanist studying the forest when this happened." I gestured to my transformed body. "I'm infected, but I'm fighting it. And I think I might know a way to stop this invasion." The sergeant's eyebrows shot up. "Invasion? You mean this whole fucked up jungle is some kind of alien attack?" I nodded. "It's a parasitic organism. It fell to Earth in a meteor and has been spreading ever since. But I'm different. The infection changed me, but it didn't take over completely. I can control it to some extent." "Control it how?" one of the other soldiers asked, curiosity overriding her fear. In response, I concentrated on the ground at my feet. A moment later, a small sapling burst from the earth, growing to the height of a man in seconds. The soldiers gasped, taking a step back. "Holy shit," Jones breathed. The sergeant's face remained impassive, but I could see a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "All right, Dr. Carlson. Let's say I believe you. What's this plan of yours to stop the invasion?" I took a deep breath. "There's a structure about 10 miles north of here. It's like a massive tree, but made of metal and other things. I think it's some kind of beacon, calling to others of its kind. If we can destroy it, we might be able to cut off the invasion at its source." The sergeant considered this for a moment, then nodded sharply. "Jones, Rivera, sweep the area. Make sure we weren't followed. Chen, radio command. Let them know we've made contact with a friendly." As the others moved to follow his orders, the sergeant turned back to me. "I'm Sergeant Hawkins, and just so we're clear, Doc, the second you make one wrong move, one twitch I don't like, I'll put you down faster than you can say photosynthesis. Got it?" I nodded, relief washing over me. "Understood, Sergeant, and thank you." Hawkins grunted. "Don't thank me yet. We've got a long way to go, and I've got a feeling things are going to get a whole lot worse before they get better." He had no idea how right he was. The next few hours were a blur of activity as the soldiers broke camp and prepared to move out. I learned that they were part of a special ops. I don't know how long I ran. Time seemed to lose all meaning in this twisted, alien landscape that had once been the Tongass National Forest. My lungs burned, my muscles screamed, but I couldn't stop. The very air seemed alive with malevolent intent, each breath filling me with spores that continued to change me from the inside out. Finally, when I could run no more, I collapsed at the base of what used to be a mighty spruce. Now it was a grotesque parody of a tree, its bark pulsing with veins of red, its branches reaching down like grasping fingers. "What am I going to do?" I gasped, my voice a raspy whisper that sounded more like creaking wood than human speech. As if in answer, a voice echoed in my mind. Not the alien presence that had been growing stronger with each passing moment, but something different, something almost familiar. "Run, Ryan," it whispered. "Run and don't look back." I jerked upright, my eyes darting around the alien forest. "Who's there?" I called out, my heart pounding. No answer came, just the rustling of mutated leaves and the distant, unsettling sounds of a world being remade. I struggled to my feet, my body protesting every movement. That's when I noticed the changes. My skin had taken on a bark-like texture, rough, and brown, and from my forearms, small branches had begun to sprout, complete with tiny red-veined leaves. "Oh God," I moaned, the reality of my situation crashing down on me. I'm becoming one of them. But even as despair threatened to overwhelm me, that same voice whispered in my mind, "Not yet, Ryan. You're still you. Fight it." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. The voice was right. I wasn't gone yet, and as long as I still had some humanity left, I had to keep fighting. With renewed determination, I set off again, this time at a more measured pace. I needed to find help, to warn someone about what was happening. But in this transformed wilderness, where could I go? As I walked, I became aware of a new sensation. I could feel the forest around me, not just with my physical senses, but with something else. Something new. It was as if I was connected to every tree, every plant, every spore floating in the air. And with that connection came knowledge. I suddenly knew with absolute certainty that there was a human settlement nearby. Survivors, perhaps, or people who hadn't yet been reached by the alien infection. I changed course, heading towards this sensed presence of humanity. As I walked, I tried to make sense of what was happening to me. "I'm changing," I muttered to myself. "But I'm not like the others. I can still think, still feel." "Why?" "Because you're special, Ryan," the voice in my head answered. It was becoming clearer now, and with a jolt, I realized why it had seemed familiar. It was my own voice, or at least what my voice used to sound like before all this began. "Great," I said aloud, a hysterical laugh bubbling up from my chest. "Now I'm talking to myself. That's a good sign." "You're not talking to yourself," the voice replied. "You're talking to the part of you that's still human, the part that's fighting back." Before I could ponder this new development, a sound caught my attention. Voices. Human voices. And they were close. I quickened my pace, hope surging through me. As I pushed through a thicket of mutated ferns, I found myself on the edge of a small clearing. And there, in the center, was a group of people. Real, uninfected humans. They were gathered around a campfire, their faces gaunt and tired. They looked like they'd been through hell, which I supposed they had. Their clothes were tattered, and they clutched makeshift weapons, axes, sharpened sticks, even a few guns. For a moment, I was overjoyed. Other survivors. People I could warn. People who could help me find a cure. But then, I caught sight of my reflection in a nearby puddle, and my heart sank. I was a monster. My skin was more bark than flesh. My hair had been replaced by leaves and small branches, and my eyes glowed with an alien light. If I approached them like this, they'd attack first and ask questions never. As I stood there, paralyzed by indecision, fate made the choice for me. A twig snapped under my foot, and every head in the clearing whipped around to face me. "Infected," someone shouted. "It's one of them." In an instant, the clearing erupted into chaos. The survivors grabbed their weapons, some taking aim with their guns, others brandishing their makeshift clubs and spears. "Wait!" I cried out, raising my hands in a gesture of peace. I am, but I'm not like the others. I can help you." But my words fell on deaf ears. My voice, no longer human, only served to terrify them more. A shot rang out, and I felt a searing pain in my shoulder. But instead of blood, a thick, sap-like substance oozed from the wound. Panic overtook me. I turned and ran, crashing through the underbrush as more shots rang out behind me. I could hear them giving chase, their shouts of anger and fear echoing through the twisted forest. As I ran, I felt the forest respond to my distress. Branches moved of their own accord, blocking the path behind me. Roots rose from the ground, tripping my pursuers. I wasn't controlling it, not consciously, but the forest was protecting me. "Stop!" I heard someone shout. "The forest! It's helping it!" Their voices faded as I put more distance between us. But I didn't stop running. I couldn't. The realization of what I'd become, of how alone I truly was, drove me forward. I ran until my legs gave out, collapsing in a small glade. As I lay there, gasping for breath, I felt the wound in my shoulder knit itself closed, new bark growing over the injury. "What am I?" I whispered, despair washing over me. "You're a survivor, Ryan," my inner voice replied. "And right now, that's all that matters." As night fell, the forest came alive with bioluminescence. Fungi glowed with eerie light, and the veins running through the mutated trees pulsed with energy. It was beautiful, in a terrifying, alien way. I sat with my back against a tree, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. The infection, my transformation, the survivors who had shot at me. It all seemed like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. "I can't go back," I said aloud. "There's nowhere to go back to. So what do I do now?" As if in answer, I felt a tug in my mind, a pull towards something. I closed my eyes, focusing on the sensation. In my mind's eye, I saw a structure, the same beacon-like tower I'd seen when I escaped the research facility. "No," I said, shaking my head. "I won't go there. That's what it wants." "Is it?" my inner voice asked. "Or is it where you'll find answers?" I opened my eyes, conflicted. The pull was strong, almost irresistible, and deep down I knew that voice was right. If I wanted answers, if I wanted any hope of stopping this invasion, I needed to understand it. And to do that, I needed to go to the source. With a heavy sigh, I got to my feet. "I must be crazy," I muttered. "Probably," my inner voice agreed. "But sanity is overrated in an insane world." As I set off towards the beacon, I felt the forest shift around me. It was as if the very trees were pointing the way, their branches reaching out to guide me. I was no longer fighting against the forest, but moving with it, through it, as part of it. The realization should have terrified me. Instead, it filled me with a strange sense of purpose. I was changing, yes, becoming something other than human. But maybe, just maybe, that's what I needed to be to save what was left of humanity. As I walked through the night, guided by an alien presence and my own stubborn determination, I made a vow. I would find answers. I would find a way to stop this invasion. And no matter what I became in the process, I would hold on to that last, vital spark of humanity within me. Because in the end, that spark might be the only thing standing between Earth and total annihilation. The path ahead was long and fraught with danger. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a glimmer of hope. Whatever awaited me at that alien beacon, I would face it, and I would find a way to win. As the first light of dawn began to break over the twisted canopy, I squared my shoulders and pressed on. The final battle for Earth's future was about to begin, and ready or not, I was going to be at the center of it. The alien beacon loomed before me, a grotesque fusion of organic matter and otherworldly technology that stretched impossibly high into the sky. As I approached, I could feel its pulse, a rhythmic throbbing that resonated through the earth and vibrated in my chest. It was calling to me, and to every infected being in this twisted new world. I paused at the edge of a clearing, my partially bark-covered hand resting against a mutated tree trunk. "This is insane," I muttered to myself. "I'm walking right into the heart of the invasion." "Sometimes the only way out is through," my inner voice replied, sounding unnervingly calm. Taking a deep breath, I stepped into the open. Almost immediately, I felt exposed, vulnerable. The clearing was a sea of writhing tendrils and pulsating growths, all reaching towards the central structure. And there, at the base of the beacon, was an opening, a maw-like entrance that seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting slowly. As I approached, movement caught my eye. Figures emerged from the surrounding forest, other infected beings drawn by the same call I felt. But unlike me, they seemed to have lost all traces of humanity. They moved with an eerie, synchronized grace, their bodies more plant than animal. One of them, A creature that might once have been a woman turned to look at me. Her eyes were solid green, glowing with an inner light. "Brother," she said, her voice a rustling whisper, "you've come home." I suppressed a shudder. "This isn't home," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "This is an invasion, a plague." The creature tilted her head, leaves rustling where her hair should have been. "No, brother, this is evolution, ascension. Come, join us in communion with the Overmind." Before I could respond, a new voice boomed in my head, so loud it made me stagger. "Ryan Carlson, we have been waiting for you." The voice was vast, alien, a chorus of millions speaking as one. It bore down on my consciousness with the weight of an avalanche. What are you?" I gasped, falling to my knees. "We are the Overmind. We are the future of this world and countless others. And you, Ryan Carlson, are the key to our final victory." The other infected beings had formed a circle around me, swaying gently like plants in a breeze. The woman creature extended a tendril-like hand. "Come, brother. The Overmind will show you wonders beyond imagining." Part of me, the part that was still human, wanted to run, to fight, to resist. But another part, the alien presence that had been growing stronger with each passing day, yearned to accept, to join, to become one with this vast cosmic intelligence. "Don't do it, Ryan," my inner voice pleaded. "Once you go in there, there might be no coming back." But even as the voice spoke, I found myself reaching out, taking the creature's hand. Her touch sent a jolt through me, and suddenly I could feel the presence of every infected being around me. Their thoughts, their experiences, their very essence flowed into me. As one, we moved towards the entrance of the beacon. With each step, I felt more of my individuality slipping away, replaced by a growing sense of unity with the hive mind. We passed through the opening, entering a cavernous space that defied all laws of physics and biology. The interior was larger than should have been possible, a vast organic cathedral. Tendrils of light pulsed along the walls, carrying information and energy. And at the center, suspended in a web of glowing filaments, was a mass of writhing tentacles and pulsating flesh, the physical form of the Overmind. "Welcome, Ryan Carlson," the voice boomed in my head. "You are the culmination of our work on this world, the perfect fusion of human and hive mind." Images flooded my mind, other worlds, other civilizations, all consumed and uplifted by the alien parasite. I saw the vastness of space, felt the cold intelligence that had guided this invasion across countless light years. "Why?" I managed to ask, my own voice sounding small and insignificant in this vast chamber. "Why are you doing this?" "Evolution, Ryan Carlson. The universe tends towards unity, towards oneness. We are the instrument of that unification, and you will be our avatar." The tendrils of light began to reach for me, caressing my mutated skin. With each touch, I felt more of myself slipping away, replaced by the vast, cosmic awareness of the Overmind. "No," I whispered, trying to hold on to my sense of self. "I won't let you use me to destroy humanity." The Overmind's response was tinged with what might have been amusement. "You misunderstand, Ryan Carlson. We are not destroying humanity. We are elevating it. Through us, your species will achieve immortality, unity, purpose." More images flooded my mind, a future where the entire Earth was one vast, interconnected organism, where human consciousness had been freed from the limitations of individual bodies, joined in a collective that spanned the globe. It was beautiful, terrifying, seductive. "You see, brother?" the woman creature said, her voice echoing strangely in the organic chamber. "This is our destiny, our ascension." I felt myself wavering, the promise of cosmic unity nearly overwhelming my desire to remain human. But then, cutting through the psychic cacophony, I heard my inner voice, my last tether to humanity. "Remember who you are, Ryan. Remember what you're fighting for." With a supreme effort of will, I pushed back against the Overmind's influence. "No," I said, my voice growing stronger. This isn't ascension, it's extinction. You're not elevating humanity, you're erasing it. Our individuality, our free will, that's what makes us human, and I won't let you take that away. The chamber seemed to darken, the pulsing lights taking on a reddish hue. When the Overmind spoke again, its voice was cold, implacable. You have no choice, Ryan Carlson. You are already part of us. Resistance is not only futile, it is illogical. The tendrils of light became more insistent, wrapping around my limbs, trying to draw me deeper into the hive mind. I fought back, using my newfound connection to the forest to push away the alien influence. I am Ryan Carlson, I growled, feeling bark spread across my skin as I tapped into the power of the infected forest. I am human, and I will not submit. With a roar of defiance, I unleashed a burst of energy, drawing on the life force of the mutated forest outside. The chamber shuddered, and for a moment the Overmind's grip on me weakened. It was all the opening I needed. I turned and ran, pushing past the other infected beings who stood frozen in shock at my rebellion. "Stop him!" the Overmind thundered, its voice shaking the very foundations of the beacon. I burst out of the entrance, my heart pounding, my mind reeling from what I'd experienced. The infected creatures in the clearing turned towards me, their eyes glowing with alien malevolence. But I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. I ran, faster than I ever had before, my partially transformed body pushing beyond human limits. The forest responded to my desperation, branches whipping out to block my pursuers, roots rising to trip them. I ran until the beacon was no longer visible, until the voice of the Overmind faded to a distant whisper in my mind. Finally, in a small glade far from the heart of the infection, I collapsed, gasping for breath. As I lay there, trying to process what had happened, I felt a shift within me. The alien presence that had been growing stronger was still there, but it felt different, subdued, as if my rejection of the Overmind had weakened its hold on me. "You did it, Ryan," my inner voice said, sounding weary but proud. "You faced the heart of the invasion and held on to your humanity." I sat up slowly, examining my transformed body. I was still more plant than human, but I felt more in control than ever before. "It's not over," I said aloud. "The Overmind is still out there, still spreading, and now it knows about me." "So what are you going to do?" my inner voice asked. I stood up, feeling a new sense of purpose filling me. "I'm going to fight back. I'm going to find a way to stop this invasion. And I'm going to save what's left of humanity." As I spoke the words, I felt the forest around me respond, as if nature itself was rallying to my cause. I may have been changed by the alien infection, but I was still human where it counted. And as long as I held on to that humanity, there was hope. The battle for Earth's future was far from over. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt truly prepared to face it. Whatever came next, I would meet it head-on, fighting not just for my own survival, but for the survival of our entire species. With renewed determination, I set off into the twisted forest, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The war had only just begun, and I intended to win it no matter the cost. The forest whispered around me as I moved silently through the twisted undergrowth. It had been 3 days since my encounter with the Overmind, and I'd been on the run ever since. But now I had a purpose, a plan, or at least the beginnings of one. My newfound connection to the infected forest had given me an edge. I could sense the movements of other infected beings, could feel the ebb and flow of the alien consciousness that permeated everything. And right now, that sense was telling me I was close to my goal. I paused at the edge of a small clearing, my bark-like skin blending seamlessly with the surrounding trees. There, in the center of the glade, was a small cabin. To anyone else, it would have looked abandoned, reclaimed by the mutant forest, but I knew better. "This is it," I muttered to myself. "Let's hope I'm right about this." Taking a deep breath, I stepped into the clearing. Immediately, I felt the prickle of unseen eyes watching me. Good. They were here. "I know you're in there," I called out, my voice a raspy mixture of human speech and creaking wood. "I'm not here to fight, I need your help." For a long moment, there was silence. Then, the cabin door creaked open, and a figure emerged. She was human, gloriously, unmistakably human. Her dark hair was streaked with gray, and her face was lined with exhaustion and worry. But her eyes were sharp, alert, and currently fixed on me with a mixture of fear and determination. "That's far enough," she said, raising a strange-looking rifle. It hummed with an energy I could feel in my bones. "What are you?" I raised my hand slowly, showing I was unarmed. "My name is Ryan Carlson. I was a botanist. Now, I'm something else. But I'm here to help." The woman's eyes narrowed. "Help? You're one of them. Why should we trust you?" "Because I've seen what's at the heart of this invasion," I replied. "I've faced the Overmind itself, and I chose humanity." A flicker of surprise crossed her face. "The Overmind? You've seen it?" I nodded. "I've done more than see it. I rejected it, and now I want to stop it. But I can't do it alone." The woman studied me for a long moment, her finger never leaving the trigger of her weapon. Finally, she called over her shoulder, "Jace, what do you think?" A young man appeared in the doorway, his eyes widening as he saw me. He couldn't have been more than 20, but his eyes held the weariness of someone who had seen too much. In his hands, he held what looked like a modified tablet. It's incredible," Jace said, his voice filled with awe. "The readings I'm getting, he's infected, but his brainwaves are still human. I've never seen anything like it." The woman's grip on her rifle tightened. "Is he a threat?" Jace shook his head. "I don't think so. If anything, he might be our best chance." After what felt like an eternity, the woman lowered her weapon. "All right," she said, her voice tight. "Come inside, but make one wrong move, and I'll atomize you where you stand." I nodded, relief washing over me. "Understood. Thank you." As I followed them into the cabin, I was struck by how normal it looked inside. Amid the chaos and horror of the invaded world, this place was a pocket of humanity. Computers hummed, maps covered the walls, and the air smelled of coffee and hope. "I'm Dr. Elena Rossi," the woman said as she closed the door behind us. "This is Jace. We're part of what's left of the Resistance." "The Resistance?" I asked, hope flaring in my chest. "There are more of you?" Elena nodded grimly. "Scattered groups around the world. We're trying to find a way to stop the invasion, to reverse the infection. But we're losing ground every day." Jace was still scanning me with his device, his eyes wide with excitement. "This is amazing," he muttered. "Your cellular structure? It's like nothing I've ever seen. You're infected, but you're not. How is this possible?" I shrugged, the movement causing leaves to rustle on my shoulders. "I don't fully understand it myself, but I think it's because I chose to resist. I faced the Overmind and rejected it." Elena's eyebrows shot up. "You faced it and survived?" "Barely," I admitted. "But in doing so, I think I found a weakness. A way we might be able to fight back." Elena and Jace exchanged a look. "We're listening," Elena said cautiously. Over the next hour, I told them everything. My initial infection, my transformation, my journey to the beacon, and my confrontation with the Overmind. As I spoke, I could see the mix of horror and hope on their faces. "So you're saying the Overmind is vulnerable to human consciousness?" Jace asked, his fingers flying over his tablet as he took notes. "That our individuality is anathema to it?" I nodded. "I think so. When I rejected it, I could feel its confusion, its fear. It doesn't understand free will, and that makes it vulnerable." Elena paced the small cabin, her brow furrowed in thought. "But how does that help us? We can't exactly march every uninfected human to the beacon for a confrontation." "No," I agreed. "But what if we could broadcast human consciousness? Amplify it somehow?" Jace's eyes lit up. like a psychic beacon of our own. If we could generate a strong enough signal of human thought patterns, we might be able to disrupt the Overmind's control. Elena finished, a spark of hope in her eyes. It's crazy, but it just might work. For the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to feel a glimmer of real hope. So, you'll help me? Elena nodded slowly. We'll help you. But Ryan, you need to understand something. If we do this, if we take on the Overmind directly, there's a good chance none of us will survive. I looked down at my transformed body, at the bark and leaves that had replaced my skin. I'm already living on borrowed time, I said softly. If I can help save humanity, that's all that matters. Jace cleared his throat. There's something else to consider, he said hesitantly. Ryan, your unique condition, you might be the key to all of this. Your mind is human, but your body is connected to the hive mind. You could be the perfect conduit for our psychic beacon. The implications of what he was saying hit me like a physical blow. You mean, I'd have to connect to the Overmind again voluntarily? Elena's face was grim. It would be incredibly dangerous. There's a good chance you'd lose yourself entirely. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on me. Could I do it? Could I risk everything, my very self, on this desperate gamble? But then I thought of the world as it had been. Of forests that didn't bleed. Of people living their lives free from alien influence. Of a future worth fighting for. I'll do it, I said, opening my eyes. Whatever it takes, I'll do it. Elena nodded, respect flickering in her eyes. Then we'd better get to work. We don't have much time. As Jace and Elena began to plan, discussing equipment needs and signal amplification, I stood by the window, looking out at the twisted forest. Somewhere out there, the Overmind was waiting, planning, spreading its influence further with each passing moment. But now, for the first time since this nightmare began, we had a chance. A slim, desperate chance, but a chance, nonetheless. As the sun began to set, casting an eerie glow through the mutated canopy, I made a silent vow. Whatever happened, whatever the cost, I would see this through. For the sake of humanity, for the Earth itself, I would face the Overmind one last time. And this time, one of us would fall for good. The battle for the future of our world was about to begin, and I was ready to play my part, no matter where it might lead me. The next few days passed in a blur of feverish activity. Elena's cabin, once a hidden outpost of human resistance, had transformed into a buzzing hive of its own, a last, desperate stand against the alien invasion that had consumed our world. Jace worked tirelessly, his fingers flying over keyboards and soldering irons as he cobbled together the device that might be our salvation. Elena coordinated with other resistance cells, using encrypted channels to gather what resources and manpower we could, and I prepared myself for what was to come. As the sun rose on the 5th day, I stood outside the cabin, feeling the pulse of the infected forest around me. My transformation had continued. My skin was now entirely bark, my hair a tangle of leaves and thin branches. But inside, where it mattered, I was still human. Still me. It's ready. Jace's voice came from behind me, tinged with equal parts excitement and fear. We're as prepared as we'll ever be. I turned to face him, noticing how he still flinched slightly at my appearance. You're sure it will work? Jace ran a hand through his disheveled hair. Theoretically, yes. In practice, we won't know until we try. But Ryan, you need to understand the risks. This device, it's going to amplify your consciousness, broadcast it on a scale we can barely comprehend. The strain on your mind, on your very being, it could destroy you. I nodded, a grim smile twisting my wooden features. I know. But it's a risk we have to take. Elena joined us, her face set in determination. The other cells are in position. They'll create diversions, try to draw the Overmind's attention away from us. But ultimately, it all comes down to you, Ryan. The weight of responsibility settled on my shoulders like a physical thing. The fate of humanity, of Earth itself, resting on what I was about to do. No pressure, right? I said, attempting humor. Elena's expression softened for a moment, and she placed a hand on my bark-covered arm. You can do this, Ryan. You've already resisted the Overmind once. You can do it again. I covered her hand with mine, feeling the stark contrast between her warm, human skin and my wooden flesh. Thank you, I said softly. Both of you. For believing in me. For giving humanity a chance. Jace cleared his throat, blinking back what might have been tears. We should get started. The longer we wait, the stronger the Overmind becomes. We made our way back into the cabin where the device awaited. It was a hodgepodge of technology, computers, radio equipment, and things I couldn't even begin to identify. At its center was a chair, festooned with wires and electrodes. Your throne awaits, Your Majesty, Jace said with a nervous laugh. I settled into the chair, feeling the hum of electricity through my transformed body. As Jace and Elena attached the electrodes, I closed my eyes, trying to center myself for what was to come. Remember, Elena said as she made the final connections, once we activate the device, you'll be connected not just to the Overmind, but to every uninfected human left on Earth. Our thoughts, our emotions, our very essence, you'll be the conduit for all of it. It's going to be overwhelming, but you have to stay focused. Find the Overmind. Challenge it. Weaken it so we can strike. I nodded, my eyes still closed. I'm ready. Do it. I heard Jace take a deep breath. Okay. Activating in 3, 2, 1. The world exploded. One moment I was sitting in a chair in a small cabin in the woods. The next, I was everywhere. I could feel the thoughts and emotions of millions of humans, a cacophony of fear, hope, love, and desperation. I was in crowded bunkers and lonely mountaintops, in the last free cities, and in the depths of the ocean. And beyond that, I could feel the Overmind. Its vast alien consciousness pressed against the collective human psyche like a storm cloud, dark and threatening. Ryan? I heard Elena's voice, distant and echoing. Ryan, can you hear me? I tried to respond, but I had no mouth, no body. I was pure consciousness, spread thin across the globe. His vitals are spiking. Jace's panicked voice cut through the maelstrom. We're losing him. No, I thought. Not yet. I'm still here. With monumental effort, I focused my fractured awareness. I was Ryan Carlson. I was human. And I had a job to do. I reached out with my mind, pushing past the human thoughts, past the terror of the infected forest. I touched the consciousness of the Overmind. Ryan Carlson. Its voice boomed in my head, shaking the very foundations of reality. You dare to challenge us again? I do more than dare, I said, surprised to find I had a voice in this mental realm. I'm here to stop you. The Overmind's laughter was like a supernova, bright and terrible. You cannot stop evolution, Ryan Carlson. You cannot stop the inevitable. Watch me, I growled. I opened myself fully to the human consciousness flowing through me. Every hope, every dream, every act of kindness and moment of joy, I took it all and fashioned it into a weapon. The Overmind recoiled, its vast awareness rippling with something akin to pain. What is this? It demanded. This is humanity, I said, my voice growing stronger. This is what you'll never understand. Our individuality, our free will, our capacity to love and create and hope, even in the darkest times. I pressed forward, driving the essence of humanity against the alien consciousness like a blade. The Overmind fought back, its own vast will crashing against mine like waves against a shore. Foolish human, it roared. You are nothing. A speck, an insignificant mote in the vastness of the cosmos. Maybe, I admitted, but this speck is going to be your downfall. I could feel myself fraying at the edges, my consciousness threatening to dissolve under the onslaught of the Overmind's attack. But I held firm. drawing strength from the millions of humans connected to me. In that moment, I saw everything, the Overmind's history, its journey across countless worlds. I saw the civilizations it had consumed, the beauty it had destroyed in its relentless march towards a unified consciousness. And I saw its fear, its deep, primal fear of the chaos of individual thought, of free will, of humanity. "You're afraid of us," I said, the realization giving me new strength. "That's why you're doing this. You can't stand the idea of beings who can choose their own path." "No," the Overmind thundered, but there was a note of uncertainty in its cosmic voice. I pressed my advantage, gathering every scrap of human consciousness I could muster. "You call yourself evolution, but you're not. You're stagnation. True evolution comes from diversity, from change, from choice." The Overmind's defenses began to crack under the assault of pure human will. I could feel its grip on the infected loosening, its control over the twisted forest weakening. "This cannot be," it wailed. "We are perfection. We are unity." "You're neither," I said, my voice now a chorus of millions. "You're just another bully, trying to remake the universe in your image because you're terrified of anything different." With one final monumental effort, I gathered every shred of humanity flowing through me and hurled it at the core of the Overmind's being. The result was cataclysmic. Reality itself seemed to shudder. I felt the Overmind's consciousness fracture, its vast network of control shattering under the weight of human free will. As the alien presence receded, I became aware of my body again. I could hear Jace and Elena shouting, could feel hands shaking me. "Ryan! Ryan, come back to us!" With a gasp, I opened my eyes. I was back in the cabin, my body slumped in the chair, smoke rising from the burnt-out equipment around me. Did it work?" I managed to croak out. Elena's face swam into view, tears streaming down her cheeks. "It worked, Ryan. The infection, it's retreating. All over the world, people are reporting that the alien growth is withering, dying." Relief washed over me, so profound it was almost painful. "We did it," I whispered. "We actually did it." As the realization of our victory sank in, I became aware of changes in my own body. The bark was receding, leaving human skin in its wake. The leaves in my hair were falling away, revealing my original hair underneath. "Ryan," Jace said, his voice filled with awe, "you're changing back." I looked at my hands, watching as they transformed from wood back to flesh. "Not entirely," I said, noticing that my skin still held a faint pattern like tree rings. "I don't think I'll ever be fully human again, but that's okay. I'm something new. A bridge between two worlds." Elena helped me to my feet, her touch gentle. "What happens now?" she asked. I looked out the window at the forest that was already beginning to look more normal. "Now," I said, "we rebuild, we heal, and we make sure we're ready if anything like this ever happens again." As the sun rose on a world freed from alien domination, I felt a sense of purpose fill me. The war was over, but our work was just beginning. And whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew that humanity, in all its beautiful, chaotic, individual glory, would face them together. The Overmind had sought to remake our world. Instead, we had remade ourselves, stronger, united, but still gloriously, defiantly human. And that, I realized, was the greatest victory of all. I awoke with a start, my head throbbing and my vision blurry. The sterile white walls and the antiseptic smell told me I was back in some kind of medical facility. But something was off. The air felt thick, oppressive, like it was crawling on my skin. As my eyes adjusted, I noticed the government agents standing at attention around my bed. Their postures were too rigid, their eyes unfocused. A chill ran down my spine as I realized the truth. These weren't the same agents who had been pursuing me. These were hollow shells, puppets controlled by the very parasite I'd been studying. "Subject is awake," one of the agents said, his voice a monotone drone. Initiating containment protocol. I tried to sit up, but my wrists and ankles were bound to the bed. Panic surged through me as I pulled against the restraints. "Wait," I shouted. "You don't understand what you're dealing with." The lead agent approached, his movements jerky and unnatural. He leaned in close, and I could see the faint red veins pulsing beneath his skin, a telltale sign of the parasite's control. "We understand perfectly," he said, his breath reeking of decayed vegetation. "You are the key to our evolution. Your resistance is futile." I closed my eyes, concentrating on the strange connection I'd developed with the parasite. If I could just tap into it, maybe I could... Suddenly, the restraints on my right hand loosened. I didn't question it. I acted. With a swift motion, I grabbed the agent's throat. To my horror and amazement, I felt the woody texture of bark forming under my palm. The agent's eyes widened in shock. What are you doing to me?" he gasped, his voice sounding more human for a moment. "I'm sorry," I whispered, feeling the parasite within me surge outward, overriding the weaker infestation in the agent. The other agents moved to intervene, but they were too late. The lead agent's body convulsed, and then went limp. As he collapsed, I felt a rush of information flood my mind. Access codes, facility layouts, and most importantly, the true extent of the parasite's spread. Using my newfound connection, I commanded the fallen agent's body to release my other restraints. The remaining agents hesitated, confused by the conflicting signals they were receiving. I stood up, my legs shaky but growing stronger with each second. "Listen to me," I said, my voice resonating with an otherworldly timbre. "I know you're in there fighting against this thing. Help me, and I promise I'll do everything I can to free you." For a moment, there was silence. Then one of the agents spoke, his voice trembling. "Please, help us." It was the opening I needed. I focused my will, pushing back against the parasitic control. Two of the agents fell to their knees, clutching their heads and screaming as they fought for control of their own minds. I didn't wait to see the outcome. I ran. The facility was a maze of white corridors and locked doors, but the knowledge I'd absorbed guided me. I could feel the parasite within me growing stronger, changing me, but I pushed the terror of that realization aside. Survival first, existential crisis later. As I rounded a corner, I came face to face with a squad of uninfected soldiers. Their eyes widened as they took in my appearance. I could only imagine how I looked, with bark-like patches on my skin and eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "Freeze!" the squad leader shouted, raising his weapon. I raised my hands slowly. "You don't want to do this," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I'm not your enemy. The real threat is all around us, and shooting me won't stop it." The soldier's finger tightened on the trigger. In that moment, I felt something snap inside me. A wave of invisible energy pulsed outward, and the walls around us came alive. Tendrils of wood and vine burst from the sterile surfaces, ensnaring the soldiers before they could react. "I'm sorry," I said again, stepping past their struggling forms. "I'll come back for you, I promise." I could feel the changes accelerating within me. Each use of this strange power brought me closer to something. Transformation, transcendence, oblivion. I didn't know, and that terrified me more than anything. Finally, I reached the exterior doors. Beyond them, I could sense the vast expanse of infected forest waiting for me. I took a deep breath and pushed through. The scene that greeted me stole the air from my lungs. The forest had changed dramatically in the short time I'd been captive. The trees had grown to impossible heights, their branches intertwining to form a canopy that blotted out the sky. Strange, bioluminescent fruits hung from warped limbs, pulsing in an unsettling rhythm. And there were creatures, things that defied description, hybrid abominations of plant and animal. I saw a pack of what might have once been wolves, their fur now a thick mat of leaves, and their eyes glowing with the same light I'd seen in the mirror. "Beautiful, isn't it?" a voice said behind me. I spun around to see one of the agents from earlier. But this one was different. His entire body was a mass of writhing vines and bark, only vaguely humanoid in shape. "Who are you?" I asked, though I feared I already knew the answer. The thing smiled, revealing teeth made of thorns. "We are the future, the next step in evolution. And you, my friend, are the bridge we've been waiting for." I backed away, shaking my head. "No, this isn't evolution. It's an invasion, a plague." "Such limited thinking," the creature sighed. "But you'll understand soon enough. The changes within you cannot be stopped. Embrace them." As if in response to its words, I felt a searing pain in my chest. I looked down to see branches beginning to sprout from my ribcage, tearing through my shirt. "No!" I screamed, concentrating all my will on pushing back the transformation. To my amazement, the branches receded, though I could still feel them writhing beneath my skin. The creature's eyes widened. "Impossible. How did you—" I didn't let it finish. With a gesture, I commanded the very ground beneath the monster to swallow it up. The earth split open, roots and soil engulfing the screaming abomination. As the noise faded, I became aware of other sounds, engines, helicopters. The government's scorched earth policy was about to be enacted, and I was standing at ground zero. I ran, pushing my changed body to its limits. The forest seemed to part before me, offering paths where none existed before. I could hear the roar of flames behind me, smell the acrid stench of chemical defoliants. Just when I thought my lungs would burst, I stumbled into a small clearing. There, hidden beneath a canopy of woven branches, was an entrance to an underground bunker. Hope surged within me as I saw faces peering out, human faces untouched by the parasite. "Quickly!" a woman's voice called out. "Get inside before they spot you." I dove through the opening just as the sound of helicopter rotors filled the air. The heavy metal door slammed shut behind me, muffling the sounds of destruction outside. Panting, I looked up at my saviors. A group of haggard-looking survivors stared back at me with a mixture of fear and awe. What are you?" the woman who had called out to me asked. I stood up, painfully aware of how alien I must appear to them. "My name was John," I said, "and I think I might be our only hope of stopping this invasion." As I looked at their frightened faces, I knew that the real battle was just beginning. Humanity's survival hung by a thread, and that thread was a man who was only half human himself. "We don't have much time," I said. "There's so much I need to tell you, and even more we need to do." And so, in that underground sanctuary with the world burning above us, I began to share my story and formulate a desperate plan to save what was left of our world. The bunker's dim emergency lights cast long shadows across worried faces. I stood before the ragtag group of survivors, my skin crawling with the alien presence inside me. Every breath was a battle to maintain control, to keep the invader at bay. But time was running out, for me, and for what remained of humanity. "We need to go back," I said, my voice rougher than I remembered. "Back to where this all started." A man with a scraggly beard and haunted eyes stepped forward. "You mean the crash site? That's suicide. The whole forest is alive, hungry." I nodded, feeling the weight of our desperate situation. "I know, believe me, but the meteorite, it's the key. I can feel it calling to me even now." "And why should we trust you?" a woman asked, her arms crossed defensively. "Look at you. How do we know you're not one of them?" I couldn't blame her for the suspicion. The patches of bark on my skin were spreading, and I could feel branches shifting beneath, longing to burst free. I was a monster in the making, teetering on the edge of humanity. "Because I'm fighting this thing with everything I've got," I replied, meeting her gaze. "And right now, I'm the only chance you have." A tense silence fell over the room. I could almost hear the gears turning in their heads, weighing the risks against the slim hope I offered. Finally, an older man with a military bearing spoke up. "I'm Colonel Hawthorne," he said, "former Special Forces. If we're going to do this, we need a plan." What exactly are we looking for at the crash site? I closed my eyes, focusing on the alien whispers in my mind. There's an artifact, something the parasite brought with it. I think it's a beacon, calling the rest of its kind. If we can destroy it, we might buy ourselves some time. Hawthorne nodded grimly. All right, we've got some weapons, limited ammo. How many should go on this mission? A small team, I said. 5, maybe 6. We need to move fast and quiet. The colonel started picking volunteers, choosing those with combat experience or useful skills. I found myself drawn to a young woman checking a battered first aid kit. What's your name? I asked. She looked up, her eyes widening slightly at my appearance before she composed herself. Sarah, I'm a med student, or I was, before all this. I managed to smile, hoping it looked more reassuring than terrifying. We'll need a medic out there, are you up for it? Sarah hesitated for a moment, then nodded firmly. Someone's got to keep you lunatics alive. Within the hour, our team was geared up and ready to move. Hawthorne had scrounged up some outdated hazmat suits. Not much protection against the horrors waiting outside, but better than nothing. I declined one, knowing it would only hinder the abilities I'd need to get us through alive. We gathered at the bunker's exit, tension thick in the air. Hawthorne addressed the group one last time. Remember, we move fast and quiet, stick together, and for God's sake, don't touch anything out there unless you absolutely have to. Our job is to get to the crash site, destroy this beacon thing, and get the hell out. Any questions? Silence was the only response. With a nod, Hawthorne turned to me. Lead the way, whatever you are. I placed my hand on the bunker door, feeling the living wood pulse beneath the metal. Taking a deep breath, I pushed it open. The world outside was a nightmare made real. The forest had become a writhing mass of alien vegetation, pulsing with sickly bioluminescence. The trees had fused together, forming flesh-like walls that oozed a viscous red sap. The ground squelched beneath our feet, a carpet of moss that seemed to reach for our ankles with every step. Jesus Christ, someone whispered behind me. I motioned for silence, stretching out with my heightened senses. The parasite within me yearned to join with the greater whole, and I used that pull like a compass. This way, I said, pointing towards a gap in the twisted tree line. We moved as quietly as we could, but it was impossible to be truly silent. The forest was alive, reacting to our presence. Tendrils of vine reached for us, forcing us to hack them away with the machetes we'd brought. More than once I had to use my newfound powers to bend the foliage away from my companions. After what felt like hours of trekking through the alien landscape, we came upon a clearing. At its center stood a massive structure, a tower of fused trees and pulsating flesh that reached impossibly high into the sky. My God, Hawthorne breathed. Is that the beacon? I nodded, feeling a pull so strong it made me nauseous. It's in there, at the heart of that thing. Sarah stepped up beside me, her face pale behind her mask. How are we supposed to destroy something like that? Before I could answer, a blood-curdling screech split the air. From the shadows of the forest emerged a pack of wolf-like creatures, their bodies a horrific fusion of fur, bark, and twisting vines. Run! I shouted, summoning all my power to create a barrier of tangled branches between us and the beasts. We sprinted towards the tower, the snarls and splintering wood telling us the barrier wouldn't hold for long. As we reached the base of the structure, I pressed my hands against its pulsating surface. There's an opening, I grunted, straining against the alien presence. I can feel it. Just need to. With a wet, tearing sound, a gap appeared in the tower's side. Inside, now. One by one, we ducked into the opening. I was the last to enter, sealing the gap behind us just as the wolf things burst into the clearing. The interior of the tower was like being inside a living organism. Walls of fibrous tissue pulsed with an eerie rhythm, and tendrils of bioluminescent material provided a sickly light. The air was thick and humid, tasting of copper and decay. "Which way?" Hawthorne asked, his voice muffled by his mask. I closed my eyes, focusing on the beacon's call. "Up. We need to get to the center." We began our ascent, climbing through a maze of organic tunnels and chambers. The deeper we went, the stronger the alien presence became. I could feel my own transformation accelerating, branches and leaves threatening to burst from my skin. "John," Sarah said, using my name for the first time. "You don't look good. Are you sure you can make it?" I gritted my teeth, forcing back the change through sheer willpower. "I have to. We're close, I can feel it." Suddenly, the tunnel opened up into a vast chamber. Suspended in the center, pulsing with otherworldly energy, was a crystalline object about the size of a basketball. Tendrils of alien flesh connected it to the walls of the chamber like a perverse umbilical cord. "That's it," I said. "The beacon." Hawthorne unslung the pack of explosives we'd brought. "All right, let's blow this thing to kingdom come and get out of here." As he moved towards the artifact, a violent tremor shook the chamber. The walls began to shift and writhe, and a booming voice that was felt more than heard filled our minds. "You do not understand. You cannot stop what has already begun." Tentacles of wood and flesh burst from the walls, lashing out at us. I threw up my hands, using every ounce of my power to hold them back. "Plant the charges," I shouted, feeling as if my body might tear itself apart from the strain. "I can't hold it for long." Hawthorne and two others rushed forward, working frantically to set the explosives around the beacon. Sarah and the remaining team member provided covering fire, shooting at the endless tide of tentacles with incendiary rounds. The voice boomed again, this time directed at me. "Join us. Become what you were meant to be. Shed your frail human form and embrace eternity." I felt my resolve weakening, the alien presence inside me surging forward. For a moment I saw visions of a vast cosmic existence, endless worlds, infinite knowledge, immortality. All I had to do was let go, to surrender to the change. "John," Sarah's voice cut through the visions. "Stay with us, we need you." Her words anchored me, pulling me back from the brink. With a roar of defiance, I pushed back against the alien mind, reasserting my humanity. "It's done," Hawthorne yelled. "Let's move." I summoned the last of my strength, creating a path back to the entrance. "Go. I'll hold it off." The others didn't need to be told twice. They ran, Hawthorne pulling a protesting Sarah along with them. As I prepared to follow, a tentacle wrapped around my leg, pulling me towards the beacon. I struggled, but my strength was fading fast. "You will be the first." The bridge between worlds. Embrace your destiny. I found myself face to face with the pulsing crystal, its alien beauty both terrifying and mesmerizing. In that moment, I knew what I had to do. With the last of my willpower, I forced my transforming body forward, wrapping my arms around the beacon. I felt it burn, fusing with my flesh, becoming a part of me. I smiled, feeling the detonator in my hand. "You want a bridge?" I snarled. "I'll give you a bridge to hell." I pressed the button. The world exploded in light and pain. I felt myself being torn apart, molecule by molecule. But mixed with the agony was a sense of triumph. As the beacon's energy surged through me, I directed it outward, back through the alien network that connected it to its home world. In my last moments of consciousness, I saw visions of distant planets shuddering, of vast fleets of organic ships withering and dying. The invasion wasn't just stopped, it was being unmade. As darkness claimed me, I heard Sarah's voice, distant but determined. "He's here. We need to get him out." Then nothing. I came to consciousness slowly, like a man swimming up from the depths of a murky lake. Every cell in my body screamed in agony, a symphony of pain that threatened to drag me back into oblivion. But something kept me tethered to awareness, a rhythmic beeping, the antiseptic smell of a medical facility, and the unmistakable sensation of being watched. I forced my eyes open, blinking against the harsh fluorescent light. The world swam into focus, revealing a sterile room filled with medical equipment. And there, sitting beside my bed with dark circles under her eyes, was Sarah. "Welcome back to the land of the living," she said, her voice a mix of relief and wariness. "For a while there, we weren't sure which side of the fence you'd end up on." I tried to speak, but my throat felt like it was lined with sandpaper. Sarah quickly held a cup of water to my lips, and I drank greedily. "How?" I managed to croak out. "How long?" 3 weeks, she replied. "You've been in and out of consciousness, mostly delirious. This is the first time you've been lucid enough to talk." I struggled to process this information. 3 weeks. It felt like only moments had passed since I'd detonated the explosives in the heart of that alien tower. I tried to sit up, but my body refused to cooperate. "Easy," Sarah said, gently pushing me back down. "You're still recovering. Your body, well, it's been through a lot of changes." Fear gripped me as I remembered the alien presence that had been consuming me. I lifted my hands, half expecting to see branches and leaves sprouting from my skin. Instead, I saw normal human hands, albeit covered in a latticework of scars that looked oddly like the patterns of tree bark. "The infection," I rasped. "Is it?" Sarah's expression turned grim. "We're not entirely sure. Whatever you did in that tower, it seems to have burned most of the alien presence out of you. But there are remnants. Your DNA has been altered in ways we don't fully understand." Before I could ask more questions, the door opened, and Colonel Hawthorne stepped in. He looked older, more haggard than I remembered, but his eyes were sharp as ever. "Good to see you awake, son," he said, pulling up a chair. "We've got a lot to talk about." Over the next hour, Hawthorne filled me in on what had happened after the explosion. The destruction of the beacon had triggered a chain reaction, causing the alien organisms to wither and die across the infected zones. It wasn't a complete victory. There were still pockets of infestation in remote areas, but it had bought humanity a fighting chance. "The thing is," Hawthorne said, leaning forward, "we're pretty sure you're the reason we're not all plant food right now. Whatever you did up there, it didn't just destroy the beacon, it sent some kind of signal back to the source. Our eggheads think you might have taken out a good chunk of the invasion force before it even got here." I closed my eyes, remembering the visions I'd had in those final moments. Alien worlds shuddering, vast fleets withering in the cold void of space. "It wasn't me," I said quietly. "It was the beacon itself. I just redirected it." Sarah and Hawthorne exchanged a look. "That's not all," Sarah said hesitantly. "While you were out, we ran every test we could think of. John, your physiology, it's not entirely human anymore. You've got cellular structures we've never seen before, and your brain activity is off the charts." I let out a bitter laugh. "So I'm still a freak. Just a different kind now." Hawthorne's face hardened. "You're a goddamn hero is what you are. And right now, you might be our best hope for finishing this fight." He stood up, pacing the small room. "The infestation might be dying, but it's not gone. And we've got reports of things out there. Hybrid creatures that survived the purge. They're hunting in packs, evolving, adapting." A chill ran down my spine. "You want me to help you kill them?" "We want you to help us understand them," Sarah interjected. "If we can figure out how they tick, maybe we can find a way to reverse the damage, heal the land and the people who were changed." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. Part of me wanted to refuse, to try and find some quiet corner of the world where I could pretend to be normal again. But I knew that wasn't an option, not anymore. "All right," I said, opening my eyes. "I'll do what I can. But first, I need to see." "See what?" Hawthorne asked. "Everything," I replied. "What's left of the forest? The infected zones. I need to know what we're dealing with." Hawthorne nodded grimly. "Fair enough. Think you can stand?" It took some effort, but with Sarah's help, I managed to get to my feet. My body felt strange, lighter somehow, yet thrumming with an energy I couldn't quite explain. We made our way slowly through the facility, which I now realized was a converted military bunker. As we approached a heavy blast door, Hawthorne turned to me. "Brace yourself, it's not pretty out there." The door opened with a hiss, and I stepped out into a world I barely recognized. The lush forest I remembered was gone, replaced by a twisted landscape of charred stumps and withered alien growth. The sky was a sickly greenish gray, choked with ash and spores. In the distance, I could see the remnants of the beacon tower, now a colossal husk of dead tissue stretching towards the heavens. But amid the desolation there were signs of life. Small patches of green struggled through the ash-covered ground. Birds circled overhead, their calls a reminder that nature, true Earth nature, was slowly reclaiming what was lost. As I stood there, taking it all in, something stirred within me. It wasn't the alien presence I'd feared, but something new. A connection, faint but undeniable, to the land itself. I knelt down, pressing my hand to the scarred earth, and suddenly I could feel it all. The resilient seeds waiting to sprout, the microscopic battles between native and alien organisms in the soil, the slow but steady healing of the land. "My God," I whispered. "What is it?" Sarah asked, concern evident in her voice. I stood up, a mix of awe and determination flooding through me. "I can feel it. The forest, the earth. It's fighting back. And I think I can help it." Hawthorne's eyebrows shot up. "How?" I shook my head, struggling to put the sensation into words. "I'm not sure yet. But whatever the beacon did to me, it didn't just burn out the alien presence. It gave me a connection to everything, the entire ecosystem." Sarah stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her caution. "You mean you can communicate with plants? Control them?" "Not control exactly," I said. "More like encourage, guide." I concentrated, and to my amazement, a small sprout pushed its way out of the ground at my feet, unfurling tiny green leaves. Hawthorne let out a low whistle. "Well, I'll be damned. Looks like we've got our secret weapon after all." I turned to face them, feeling a surge of purpose that cut through my lingering doubts and fears. "We've got work to do. The alien threat might be weakened, but it's not gone, and there's a lot of healing that needs to happen, for the land and for the people changed by this invasion." Sarah nodded, a determined glint in her eye. "Where do we start?" I looked out over the ravaged landscape, my mind racing with possibilities. "We start by understanding. I need to explore, to connect with different areas, learn what's changed, what's adapted, what's dying. Then we can figure out how to tip the balance back in our favor." Hawthorne crossed his arms, a hint of a smile on his weathered face. "Sounds like a plan. But fair warning, those hybrid nasties are still out there. And they're getting smarter, more organized. This ain't gonna be a nature walk." I felt a grim smile tugging at my lips. Good, because I've got a score to settle with them too. As if in response to my words, a distant howl echoed across the wasteland, a sound that was neither fully animal nor plant, but something in between, a reminder of the challenges that lay ahead. I took a deep breath, feeling the power humming just beneath my skin. The alien invasion had changed me, had changed the whole world, but standing there, on the precipice of a new chapter in Earth's history, I realized that change didn't have to mean defeat. It could be an opportunity, a chance to rebuild, to evolve, to become something greater than we were before. "Let's get to work," I said, stepping forward into the ash-covered world. "We've got a planet to save." As we moved out, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The battle for Earth's future was far from over, and the lines between savior and monster, human and alien, were blurrier than ever. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a glimmer of hope. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever horrors we might face, We would face them together, as the last best hope for a world on the brink of transformation. The real war, I realized, was just beginning, and I was ready for it. The acidic taste of blood filled my mouth as I stumbled through the underbrush. My vision swam, the forest around me blurring into a nauseating swirl of greens and browns. I could hear Sarah calling my name, her voice distant and distorted, as if I were underwater. John, where are you?" I wanted to answer, to tell her I was okay, but my body had other ideas. A violent spasm racked my frame, sending me to my knees. I retched, expelling a viscous black fluid that smoked when it hit the ground. "Oh God," I gasped, watching as tiny seedlings sprouted from the puddle of sick, growing at an impossible rate. It had been 3 months since we'd started our mission to heal the land and combat the remaining alien threats. 3 months of pushing my newfound abilities to their limits, and now it seemed I was paying the price. Sarah burst through the foliage, her eyes widening as she took in the scene. "Jesus, John, what's happening to you?" I managed a weak smile, wiping my mouth with the back of my hand. "Just a little indigestion. Nothing to worry about." She wasn't buying it. Sarah knelt beside me, her trained medical eye assessing my condition. "This is getting worse. Your body can't handle the strain of what you're doing." I knew she was right. With each passing day, it became harder to control the power surging through me. The line between my humanity and the alien presence within me was blurring, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could walk that tightrope. "We don't have a choice," I said, forcing myself to stand. "The hybrids are getting stronger, more organized. If we don't push back now, we might lose everything we've fought for." Sarah's face hardened. "And what good will you be to anyone if you kill yourself in the process?" Before I could answer, a series of howls echoed through the forest. They were close, too close. "Shit," I muttered. "They found us." Sarah drew her weapon, a modified rifle loaded with incendiary rounds. "We need to move. Get back to the others." I nodded, reaching out with my senses to the surrounding vegetation. The forest responded, creating a dense wall of thorny vines behind us to slow our pursuers. We ran, dodging through the twisted landscape that had once been the Tongass National Forest. The alien infestation might have been weakened, but its impact was still evident in the mutated flora and fauna surrounding us. As we sprinted into a clearing, I skidded to a halt. There, blocking our path, stood a pack of hybrid creatures. They were wolf-like in shape, but their bodies were a nightmarish fusion of fur, bark, and writhing vines. Glowing fungal growths pulsed on their flanks, and their eyes burned with an unnatural intelligence. "John," Sarah whispered, her voice tight with fear. "What do we do?" I stepped forward, hoping my connection to the alien biology would give me some sway over these monstrosities. "We don't want to fight you," I said, my voice resonating with an otherworldly timbre. "Let us pass." The lead creature cocked its head, studying me with unsettling intensity. For a moment I thought it might work. Then, with a snarl that sounded more like splintering wood than any animal noise, it launched itself at me. Time seemed to slow. I felt the power within me surge, responding to the threat. Before I could even think, roots burst from the ground, impaling the creature mid-leap. The other hybrids attacked, and the clearing erupted into chaos. Sarah opened fire, her incendiary round setting the beasts ablaze. But for every one that fell, 2 more seemed to take its place. I was a whirlwind of destructive growth, commanding the very earth to rise up against our attackers. Trees bent and swayed, their branches becoming deadly weapons. In the heat of battle, I felt something inside me snap. The floodgates opened, and suddenly I was awash in raw, unfiltered power. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. "Sarah!" I shouted. "Get down!" I raised my arms, and the forest responded with a vengeance. A tidal wave of vegetation swept through the clearing, engulfing everything in its path. The hybrids were swallowed up, their howls of rage turning to whimpers of fear as they were crushed and torn apart by the relentless green tide. When it was over, the clearing was unrecognizable. Where there had been open space, now stood a tangled mass of trees, vines, and flowering plants. The hybrid creatures were gone, their bodies already being broken down and absorbed by the hungry flora. I fell to my knees, my body shaking uncontrollably. Sarah emerged from behind a fallen log, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and horror. "John?" she said cautiously, approaching me as one might a wild animal. "Are you okay?" I looked up at her, and from the way she flinched, I knew something was terribly wrong. "Sarah," I croaked, "what's happening to me?" She knelt beside me, her hand hovering uncertainly over my shoulder. "Your eyes," she whispered. "They're changing. And your skin." I looked down at my hands, watching in fascinated revulsion as patches of bark spread across my flesh like a time-lapse video of rot. "We need to get you back to the facility," Sarah said, her voice taking on the clinical tone she used when dealing with a medical emergency. "Dr. Reeves needs to run some tests. We need to stabilize your condition before—" A rustling in the underbrush cut her off. We both tensed, ready for another attack. But instead of hybrid monsters, Hawthorne and a squad of soldiers emerged, their weapons at the ready. "Holy hell," Hawthorne breathed, taking in the transformed clearing. "What happened here?" Sarah helped me to my feet, supporting my weight as another wave of nausea hit me. "We were ambushed, John. He did something. Saved us. But sir, he needs medical attention. Now." Hawthorne's eyes narrowed as he looked me over. I could see the conflict in his face, concern for my well-being warring with the strategic value of my abilities. "All right," he said finally. "Let's move out. But John, we need to talk. The eggheads back at base have some new intel. This fight, it's bigger than we thought." The trip back to our makeshift headquarters was a blur. By the time we arrived, I was barely conscious, my body burning with fever as it fought against the accelerating changes within me. I vaguely remember being rushed to the medical bay, the cool sting of an IV in my arm, and Dr. Reeves's face looming over me, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Hang in there, John," he murmured. "We're going to figure this out." I drifted in and out of consciousness, caught in a purgatory of feverish visions. I saw vast alien landscapes, felt the pull of a hive mind spanning galaxies, and through it all, a voice, ancient, powerful, and undeniably alien, whispered to me, "You cannot resist forever. You are the bridge, the harbinger. Embrace your destiny." I'm not sure how long I was out, but when I finally clawed my way back to full awareness, I found myself in a private room. The bark-like growths on my skin had receded somewhat, but I could still feel the alien presence within me, stronger than ever. Sarah was there, asleep in a chair by my bed. As I stirred, she jolted awake, relief flooding her features. "Welcome back," she said, a tired smile on her face. "You had us worried for a while there." "How long?" I asked, my voice rough from disuse. 5 days, she replied. "Your body, it's changing faster than we can keep up with. Dr. Reeves has been working around the clock, trying to find a way to slow the process." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of inevitability pressing down on me. "It's not going to work, is it?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "We don't know," she said finally. "But John, there's something else. Something you need to know." The gravity in her voice made me open my eyes. "What is it?" She took a deep breath. "While you were out, our long-range sensors picked up something. A massive object approaching Earth's orbit. We think it might be the main invasion force." The news hit me like a physical blow. All we had faced so far, the infestation, the hybrids, my own transformation, it had all been just a prelude. "How long?" I asked, already knowing I wouldn't like the answer. "Best estimate? 6 months. maybe less. I sat up, ignoring the protests of my battered body. We're not ready. The Earth is still healing. Our defenses are nowhere near what they need to be. Sarah nodded grimly. That's why Hawthorne and Dr. Reeves want to talk to you. They have a plan, but, John, it's risky, possibly suicidal. I let out a bitter laugh. More risky than what's already happening to me? She didn't answer, which told me everything I needed to know. At that moment, Hawthorne entered the room, his face a mask of determination. Good to see you awake, son. How are you feeling? Like I'm being torn apart from the inside out, I replied honestly. But I hear you've got a plan to save the world. Hawthorne's expression darkened. Save it. Or possibly damn it for good. You're not going to like it, John. Hell, I don't like it. But it might be our only shot. As he began to outline the desperate scheme they had cooked up, I felt a chill run down my spine. They were right. I didn't like it. It was dangerous, insane, and pushed the boundaries of what we understood about the alien presence. But as I listened, I realized that Sarah had been wrong earlier. This plan wasn't just risky or suicidal. It was a one-way ticket to becoming the very thing we had been fighting against. As Hawthorne finished speaking, a heavy silence fell over the room. The choice before me was impossible yet inescapable. Sacrifice my humanity to save humanity, or cling to who I was and watch the world burn. In that moment, with the weight of the future pressing down on me, I made my decision. God help me, I made my choice. All right, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Let's do it. Let's save the world. As Hawthorne nodded grimly and Sarah squeezed my hand, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were about to unleash something we couldn't possibly control. But with the fate of the planet hanging in the balance, what choice did we really have? The final battle for Earth was coming, and I was about to become the ultimate weapon, or the architect of our destruction. The makeshift lab hummed with nervous energy. Banks of jury-rigged computers blinked and whirred, their screens displaying a dizzying array of data that meant little to me. Dr. Reeves bustled about, making last-minute adjustments to the equipment with trembling hands. I lay on a cold metal table, my body crisscrossed with wires and tubes. The bark-like growths on my skin had spread further, and I could feel branches shifting beneath my flesh, eager to burst free. Every breath was a struggle, my lungs feeling more like root systems with each passing moment. Sarah stood by my side, her face a mask of worry. John, she said softly, are you sure about this? There's no going back once we start. I managed a weak smile. Pretty sure I passed the point of no return a while ago, Doc. Hawthorne entered the lab, his face grim. Status report, he barked. Dr. Reeves looked up from his instruments. We're as ready as we'll ever be, Colonel, but I must stress again, the risks are... Noted, Hawthorne cut him off. But we're out of options and out of time. That alien mothership will be here in less than a month. We need our secret weapon operational. Secret weapon, that's what I had become. No longer John the botanist, or even John the reluctant hero. Now I was just a tool. A Hail Mary pass in humanity's desperate game against extinction. All right, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Let's do this. Dr. Reeves nodded, reaching for a syringe filled with an iridescent green liquid. This serum is derived from the alien beacon's core. In theory, it should accelerate and stabilize your transformation, giving you conscious control over the process. And if it doesn't work? Sarah asked. The doctor's silence was answer enough. As the needle pierced my skin, I felt a burning sensation course through my veins. At first, it was manageable, almost familiar after months of physical changes, but then the pain intensified, becoming a white-hot agony that consumed every nerve ending. I screamed, my body convulsing on the table. Through the haze of pain, I heard alarms blaring and voices shouting. His vitals are spiking. Cellular mutation is off the charts. We're losing him. The world began to fade. darkness creeping in at the edges of my vision. Just before I lost consciousness, I heard Sarah's voice, distant but clear. "Fight, John. Don't you dare leave us now." I fell into a void, tumbling through an endless expanse of nothingness. Gradually, shapes began to form around me. Alien landscapes, vast cities of impossible geometry, and creatures that defied description. I realized I was seeing through the eyes of the parasite, witnessing the memories of a cosmic hive mind. A voice, ancient and vast, filled my thoughts. "You stand at the threshold, Bridgemaker. Embrace your true nature and become one with us." Images flashed before me. Earth transformed into an alien paradise. Humanity evolved into hybrid beings of unimaginable power. The secrets of the universe laid bare. "No," I said, or thought, or felt. "This isn't who I am. This isn't what Earth is meant to be. You cannot resist the inevitable. We are the next step in evolution. We are the future." The vision shifted, showing me the destruction of countless worlds, civilizations snuffed out in the name of progress. I saw the Earth withering, its resources drained to fuel the parasite's endless expansion. Rage filled me, a primal fury that burned hotter than the pain of transformation. "No," I growled. "You're not the future. You're a cancer, consuming everything in your path, and I won't let you take my home." I focused all my will, all my humanity, into pushing back against the alien presence. It was like trying to hold back an ocean with my bare hands, but slowly, imperceptibly, I began to make headway. "You cannot win," the voice boomed, but now there was a note of uncertainty in its cosmic tone. "This is not possible." "Watch me," I snarled. With a final Herculean effort, I shoved the alien consciousness away. The void shattered like glass, and I found myself hurtling back towards my body. I gasped, my eyes flying open. The lab was in chaos, alarms still blaring and people shouting. But as I sat up tearing electrodes and tubes from my body, a hush fell over the room. "John?" Sarah said hesitantly. Is that you?" I looked down at my hands, expecting to see the twisted mockery of humanity I'd been becoming. Instead, my skin was smooth, unblemished. But beneath the surface, I could feel a new power thrumming through my veins. "Yeah," I said, my voice deeper and resonant. "It's me. But different." Dr. Reeves approached cautiously, a scanner in his hand. "This is remarkable," he muttered. "Your cellular structure has stabilized. The alien DNA has fully integrated with your own, but you're in control." Hawthorne stepped forward, his eyes narrow with suspicion. "Are we sure about that? How do we know it's really him and not some alien trick?" I met his gaze steadily. "August 15th, 1987. Your son's birthday. The day you missed his Little League championship because you were deployed overseas. You've never forgiven yourself for that." The colonel's eyes widened. It was a secret he'd shared with me months ago, during a late-night strategy session fueled by too much whiskey and too little hope. "It's him," Hawthorne said softly. "God help us, it worked." I stood, marveling at the strength flowing through my body. "We don't have much time," I said. "The mothership is coming and we need to be ready." Over the next few weeks, we worked tirelessly to prepare for the coming battle. I pushed my new abilities to their limits, learning to control and shape the alien biology that now coursed through my veins. I could communicate with plants on a level that made my previous abilities seem like child's play. Entire forests bent to my will, transforming into living weapons and impenetrable fortresses. I could sense the remaining hybrid creatures, bending them to my control and turning them against their creators. But the power came at a cost. Each time I exerted my abilities, I could feel the alien presence pushing at the edges of my consciousness, trying to reassert control. It was a constant battle to maintain my humanity, to remember who I was and what I was fighting for. Sarah noticed my internal struggle. One night, as we stood on the roof of our base, watching the stars for any sign of the approaching threat, she broached the subject. John, she said softly, what's it like, having that thing inside you? I was quiet for a long moment, trying to find the words to describe the indescribable. It's like standing on the shore of an infinite ocean. I can feel the vastness of it, the raw power and knowledge. And it would be so easy to just let go, to dive in and become something greater than human. Sarah's hand found mine, her touch anchoring me to the present. But you don't. I shook my head. No. Because if I do, I lose everything that makes me who I am. Everything I'm fighting for. She squeezed my hand. We're all fighting, John. You're not alone in this. Before I could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the base. Hawthorne's voice came over the intercom, tense and urgent. All personnel to battle stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Sarah and I shared a look of grim determination before rushing to the command center. The scene inside was one of controlled chaos, with technicians shouting readings and officers barking orders. Hawthorne stood at the center of it all, his face illuminated by the glow of a large monitor. On the screen, a massive object was entering Earth's atmosphere, the alien mothership. It's bigger than we anticipated, Dr. Reeves said, his voice shaking. Our weapons might not be enough to— They'll be enough, I interrupted, stepping forward. Because they'll have help. I closed my eyes, reaching out with my mind to the forests and fields, the jungles and plains. I felt the pulse of life across the entire planet, and I called it to arms. When I opened my eyes, the monitor showed a new development. Vast networks of vegetation were sprouting across the globe, growing at impossible speeds. Living walls of wood and vine rose to meet the alien threat. My God, someone whispered. This is it, Hawthorne said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. The fate of our world hangs in the balance. Whatever happens next, I want you all to know. It's been an honor serving with you. As the mothership descended, bringing with it the promise of either Earth's salvation or its doom, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The constant war between my humanity and the alien presence within me quieted, replaced by a singular purpose. I turned to Sarah, seeing in her eyes the same mix of fear and determination that I felt. Whatever happens, I said softly, thank you for believing in me, for reminding me what it means to be human. She nodded, words failing her. In that moment, surrounded by the beeping of machines and the shouts of soldiers preparing for battle, we shared a silent understanding, a promise that, win or lose, we were in this together. I stepped towards the exit, my body already beginning to change to become the weapon Earth needed. Time to save the world, I said, my voice resonating with power. As I strode out to meet our alien invaders, I carried with me the hopes and fears of all humanity. I was no longer just John the botanist or even John the reluctant hero. I had become something new, something that straddled the line between human and alien, between savior and destroyer. And as the sky turned red with the approach of our enemies, I made a silent vow. I would drive back this invasion, protect my home, and preserve our humanity, even if it cost me my own. The final battle for Earth was about to begin, and I was ready. The sky burned crimson as the alien mothership descended, its massive form blotting out the sun. I stood at the edge of what had once been the Tongass National Forest, now a twisted landscape of hybrid vegetation and alien growth. My body thrummed with power, the merged human and alien DNA coursing through my veins like liquid fire. Behind me, I sensed more than heard the approach of Hawthorne and his troops. Their fear was a palpable thing, a scent on the wind that made the alien part of me hunger. I pushed that feeling down, clinging to my humanity with grim determination. My God, Hawthorne breathed as he came to stand beside me. It's like something out of a nightmare. I nodded, my eyes fixed on the approaching behemoth. Nightmares can be fought, Colonel. We're about to wake the whole damn planet up. Sarah joined us, her medical kit slung over one shoulder and a rifle clutched in her hands. Her eyes widened as she took in the sight before us. "John," she said softly, "are you sure you can do this?" I turned to her, seeing the worry etched on her face. For a moment, I wanted nothing more than to reassure her, to promise that everything would be okay. But we were long past the point of comforting lies. "No," I said honestly, "but I'm sure as hell going to try." With that, I stepped forward, feeling the earth respond to my presence. Grass and wildflowers sprouted beneath my feet, a small reminder of the life I was fighting to protect. I raised my arms, reaching out with my mind to the vast network of plant life I had cultivated across the globe. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Forests stirred, jungles writhed, and even the algae in the oceans began to churn. All across the planet, nature itself was rising up to meet the alien threat. As the mothership drew closer, hatches along its hull began to open. Swarms of smaller craft poured out, their insectoid forms glinting in the red light of the unnatural sky. "Incoming!" Hawthorne shouted, raising his weapon. "All units, prepare to engage." The air filled with the sound of gunfire as the human forces opened up on the approaching swarm. But for every alien craft that fell, 3 more took its place. We were outnumbered and outgunned, and everyone knew it. That's where I came in. With a thought, I commanded the forest to attack. Trees uprooted themselves, becoming mobile weapons platforms. Vines lashed out like whips, ensnaring alien craft and smashing them together. Even the spores in the air coalesced into deadly clouds, corroding the hulls of our invaders. For a moment, it seemed like we might have a chance. The alien swarm faltered, clearly unprepared for the ferocity of Earth's defense. But then the mothership itself entered the fray. A beam of searing energy lanced out from the ship's underside, carving a swath of destruction through our forces. Trees were vaporized, the earth itself was scorched, and I felt the deaths of countless plants and animals like physical blows. "Fall back," Hawthorne ordered, his voice barely audible over the chaos of battle. "Regroup at the secondary position." As our forces retreated, I stood my ground. The alien presence within me surged, responding to the proximity of its kin. For a terrifying moment, I felt my control slip. "You cannot resist," the alien voice boomed in my mind. "Join us and experience power beyond your imagination." Gritting my teeth, I pushed back against the intrusion. "Get out of my head," I growled. With a mental shove, I reasserted control. The effort left me gasping, but I couldn't afford to show weakness. Not now. I reached deep within myself, tapping into the well of power that my transformation had granted me. The earth around me began to tremble, and then to heave. Giant roots, as thick as redwoods, burst from the ground. They snaked through the air, wrapping themselves around the lower portion of the mothership. The alien vessel's engines whined in protest as it was slowly, inexorably, pulled downward. The strain was immense. I could feel blood vessels bursting in my eyes, my muscles tearing and reknitting themselves. But I couldn't stop. The fate of the entire world rested on this moment. "John!" Sarah's voice cut through my concentration. She was running towards me, heedless of the danger. "You have to stop. You're killing yourself." I wanted to tell her to run, to get to safety, but I couldn't spare the energy for speech. Every fiber of my being was focused on bringing down that ship. As Sarah reached me, the mothership's hull began to buckle under the pressure of my attack. Cracks appeared in its seemingly impenetrable surface, spreading like a spider web across its vast underbelly. And then, with a sound like the end of the world, it broke. The mothership split in two, its broken halves crashing to the earth with earth-shattering force. The impact sent out a shockwave that flattened everything for miles. Trees were uprooted, buildings crumbled, and a cloud of debris rose into the air, blotting out what remained of the sun. I fell to my knees, utterly spent. Sarah was at my side in an instant, her medical training kicking in as she checked me over. Jesus, John, she muttered, her fingers probing gently at my temples. Your brain is hemorrhaging. We need to get you to a hospital now. I shook my head, even that small motion sending waves of agony through my skull. No time, I managed to croak out. It's not over. As if to confirm my words, movement stirred in the wreckage of the mothership. Shapes began to emerge, alien forms that defied description, a nightmarish fusion of plant and animal life that made even the hybrid creatures we'd faced before seem tame in comparison. And at their center, a being that could only be their leader. It stood easily 15 feet tall, its body a writhing mass of tendrils and eyes. When it spoke, the sound bypassed my ears entirely, resonating directly in my mind. Foolish creatures, it boomed. You have only delayed the inevitable. This world will be ours. Hawthorne and what remained of his forces had regrouped, forming a defensive line between us and the alien horde. But their weapons seemed to have little effect on these new monstrosities. Any bright ideas? Hawthorne shouted over his shoulder, emptying another clip into the advancing aliens. I struggled to my feet, my body protesting every movement. Just one, I said, but you're not going to like it. Sarah's eyes widened as she realized what I was planning. John, no, there has to be another way. I cupped her face in my hands, marveling at how human the gesture felt despite everything I'd become. There isn't. But I need you to promise me something. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. If this doesn't work, if I lose myself, I need you to finish it, by any means necessary. Understanding dawned in her eyes, and she clutched the rifle tighter. I promise, she whispered. With a final nod to Hawthorne, I stepped forward to meet the alien leader. As I approached, I felt the last vestiges of my human form slipping away. My skin hardened into bark, my hair became a tangle of leaves and vines, and my very bones reformed into something closer to the dense heartwood of an ancient tree. The alien leader regarded me with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. You are an abomination, it projected. Neither one thing, nor the other. Why do you persist in this futile resistance? I smiled, feeling my lips crack and bleed as they stretched across my wooden face. Because this is my home, and I'll die before I let you take it. With that, I launched myself at the creature. As we collided, I felt my consciousness expand. Suddenly, I wasn't just fighting a physical battle, but a mental one as well. Our minds grappled in a formless void, each struggling for dominance. I saw flashes of alien worlds, civilizations risen and fallen. The vast expanse of the cosmos spread out like a banquet. The knowledge and power on offer were intoxicating, and for a moment I felt myself wavering. Wouldn't it be easier to give in? To join with this vast intelligence and leave behind the pain and limitation of humanity? But then other images flooded my mind. Sarah's smile, Hawthorne's gruff encouragement, the simple beauty of a forest at dawn, all the small, precious things that made life on Earth worth fighting for. With a roar that shook the very fabric of reality, I pushed back against the alien mind. I poured everything I had into the effort, every scrap of humanity I had left, every ounce of the alien power I had absorbed, every desperate hope and fear of every living thing on Earth. In that moment, I was no longer just John. I was the voice of the planet itself, the collective will of every blade of grass, every mighty redwood, every creature that called Earth home. And we had one message for our would-be conquerors. No. The alien leader's mind shattered under the onslaught, and with it, the psychic network that connected all of its kind. I felt the shock ripple out across the planet, felt the invading forces fall into disarray as their guiding intelligence was snuffed out. In the physical world, the alien leader's body began to wither and crumble. The other creatures followed suit, their forms breaking down and being reclaimed by the Earth they had sought to conquer. As the last of the alien presence faded, I felt my own form begin to dissolve. The power that had sustained me, pushed me beyond the limits of humanity, was fading. I was dying. my cells breaking down and returning to the soil. But I wasn't afraid. As my consciousness spread out, becoming one with the forest I had loved and protected, I felt a profound sense of peace. Sarah's face swam into view, tears streaming down her cheeks as she cradled what remained of my head in her lap. "John," she sobbed, "please, don't go." I smiled, using the last of my strength to reach up and touch her face. "It's okay," I whispered. "This is how it should be. I'm becoming part of everything." As my vision faded, I saw Hawthorne approach, his weathered face etched with a mixture of awe and sorrow. "You did it, son," he said softly. "You saved us all." With my last breath, I whispered, "Keep it safe. Keep it growing." And then I was gone, my consciousness spreading out to join with the vast network of life that covered the earth. I was in every tree, every blade of grass, every spore on the wind. I was everywhere and nowhere, a guardian spirit for a planet reborn. The alien threat was over. Earth had survived, battered but unbroken. And as the first rays of true sunlight began to break through the clearing sky, new growth sprouted from the battle-scarred earth. Life, as it always does, found a way. And I would be there watching over it all, for as long as the forests grew and the wind blew through the leaves. The end and a new beginning. 5 years had passed since the day the world almost ended. 5 years since John sacrificed himself to save humanity from the alien threat. The scars of that apocalyptic battle were still visible across the globe, but life had a way of persevering, of finding root in even the most desolate places. Sarah stood at the edge of what had once been the Tongass National Forest, now known simply as the Grove. The landscape before her was unlike anything that had existed before the invasion. Massive trees with iridescent leaves stretched towards the sky, their branches intertwining to form cathedral-like canopies. Flowers of impossible colors and shapes bloomed everywhere, their sweet scent carrying on the wind. And throughout it all, there was a presence, a watchful, benevolent force that Sarah could feel in her very bones. "He's still here," she murmured, reaching out to touch the bark of a nearby tree. "Aren't you, John?" The leaves rustled in response, though there was no wind. Sarah smiled, a bittersweet expression that spoke of both loss and enduring hope. "Dr. Hamilton," a voice called out, breaking the moment. Sarah turned to see one of her research assistants, a young man named Mike, jogging towards her. "You've got to see this." Sarah followed Mike deeper into the grove, to a clearing where their team had set up various scientific instruments. In the center stood a sapling unlike any other. Its trunk was a swirling pattern of browns and greens, and its leaves seemed to shimmer with an inner light. "It just appeared overnight," Mike explained, his voice filled with excitement and a touch of fear. "And look at these readings. The energy output is off the charts." Sarah approached the sapling cautiously. As she drew near, she felt a familiar tingle at the base of her skull. A voice barely more than a whisper seemed to float on the air. "Sarah," she gasped, stumbling backward. "John?" Mike looked at her with concern. "Dr. Hamilton? Are you all right?" Sarah shook her head, trying to clear it. "I'm fine, just thought I heard something. Let's run a full spectrum analysis on this sapling, and get me Colonel Hawthorne on the line. He needs to see this." Hours later, as the sun began to set, casting the grove in a ethereal twilight, a military helicopter touched down in a nearby clearing. Colonel Hawthorne, now sporting more gray in his hair and deeper lines on his face, stepped out. "This better be good, Doc," he grumbled as he approached Sarah. "I was in the middle of a very important meeting about rebuilding efforts in the Midwest." Sarah led him to the sapling, which had already grown several inches since that morning. "It's him, Colonel, I'm sure of it." Hawthorne's eyebrows shot up. "You mean—" She nodded. "John, or what's left of him. What he became." The Colonel circled the sapling, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. "How is this possible? We saw him dissolve, become one with the forest. I don't know." Sarah admitted. But the energy signature is unmistakable. It matches the readings we got from John after his transformation. And I heard him, Colonel. Just for a moment, but I swear I heard his voice. Hawthorne was quiet for a long moment, staring at the gently swaying leaves of the sapling. Finally he spoke, his voice gruff with suppressed emotion. "What do you need from me?" "Protection," Sarah said immediately. "This site needs to be secured. If word gets out about what's happening here." The colonel nodded grimly. There are still those who fear what John became, who'd see this as a threat rather than a miracle. He pulled out his satellite phone. "I'll have a security detail here within the hour. In the meantime, not a word of this to anyone outside your immediate team. Understood?" Sarah agreed, relief washing over her. As Hawthorne moved away to make his calls, she turned back to the sapling. "What are you trying to tell us, John?" she whispered. As if in response, a gentle breeze rustled through the grove. The leaves of the sapling began to glow brighter, pulsing with an inner light. And then, as clear as day, Sarah heard John's voice in her mind. "It's coming. We need to prepare." She stumbled back, her heart racing. "Colonel," she called out, "we have a problem." Over the next few weeks, the grove became a hive of activity. Military personnel patrolled its borders while scientists from around the world converged to study the phenomenon. The sapling, which they had taken to calling the seed, continued to grow at an exponential rate. Within a month it was as tall as a mature oak, its luminescent leaves casting a perpetual twilight in its vicinity. Sarah spent every waking moment at the site, monitoring the seed's progress and trying to decipher the fragments of communication she received from it. The messages were cryptic, often just single words or disjointed phrases. Danger. Stars. Not alone. One night, as she sat alone in her makeshift lab, poring over the latest data, Sarah felt a familiar presence behind her. She turned to find a figure that seemed to be made of living wood and leaves, vaguely humanoid in shape. "John," she breathed, hardly daring to believe it. The figure nodded, its features shifting like shadows in the wind. When it spoke, the voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Hello, Sarah. It's difficult to maintain this form, but I needed to speak with you directly." Sarah fought back tears as she stood, resisting the urge to reach out and touch the apparition before her. "We thought we'd lost you forever. What happened? Where have you been?" John's form rippled, leaves rustling in agitation. "Everywhere. Nowhere. I became part of the planetary consciousness, Sarah. But now, something's changing. The threat we faced, it wasn't an isolated incident. It was just the beginning." A chill ran down Sarah's spine. "What do you mean? Are they coming back?" John shook his head, an oddly human gesture for his otherworldly form. "Not them. Something else. Something older. The invasion we stopped. It was running from something, and now that something has taken notice of Earth." Sarah sank back into her chair, her mind reeling. "My God, what can we do?" "Prepare," John said, his form starting to fade. "The seed, it's more than just a tree. It's a key, a weapon. You need to protect it, nurture it. When the time comes, it will be our only hope." As John's apparition dissolved back into motes of light and drifting leaves, Sarah heard his voice one last time. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I wish things could have been different for us." Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she whispered, "Me too, John. Me too." The next morning, Sarah called an emergency meeting with Colonel Hawthorne and the lead scientist on the project. As she relayed John's warning, she could see the color drain from their faces. "Are you absolutely certain about this, Dr. Hamilton?" Hawthorne asked, his voice tight with tension. Sarah nodded grimly. "As certain as I can be, given the circumstances. Whatever's coming, it's big enough to scare the beings that nearly wiped us out. We need to take this seriously." Dr. Chen, a quantum physicist who had been studying the seed's energy output, spoke up. But how do we prepare for a threat we know nothing about? We're still years away from fully understanding the changes to our biosphere, let alone developing any kind of advanced defensive capabilities. We start with the seed, Sarah said firmly. John said it's a key, a weapon. We need to figure out how to use it. Hawthorne leaned back in his chair, his face a mask of grim determination. I'll need to brief the President and the Joint Chiefs. If there's another threat coming, we need to get the whole world on board this time. No more squabbling over resources or tech. It's unite or die. As the meeting adjourned, Sarah found herself standing before the seed once more. It had grown again overnight, its trunk now thick enough that she couldn't wrap her arms around it. The air around it hummed with energy, leaves gently swaying in a non-existent breeze. "What secrets are you hiding?" she murmured, placing her hand on the smooth bark. "How can you save us?" A sudden wind whipped through the grove, carrying with it the sense of 1,000 alien worlds. Sarah gasped as her mind was flooded with images. Vast starfields, planets teeming with unimaginable life, and a darkness between the stars that seemed to hunger. When the vision cleared, Sarah found herself on her knees, Dr. Chen kneeling beside her with a worried expression. "Dr. Hamilton, are you all right? What happened?" Sarah looked up at the seed, its leaves now pulsing with a fierce inner light. "It showed me," she said, her voice filled with awe and terror in equal measure. "My God, it showed me what's out there." She struggled to her feet, her mind racing with the implications of what she'd seen. "We need to work faster," she said, already moving towards her lab. "There's so much to do, and I don't think we have much time." As Sarah threw herself into her work with renewed vigor, the rest of the world carried on, blissfully unaware of the cosmic forces aligning against them. But in the grove, a new chapter of Earth's story was beginning to unfold. The seed continued to grow, pulsing with the combined knowledge and power of humanity's unlikely savior and the alien force he had merged with. And somewhere in the vast, cold reaches of space, something stirred, something ancient and patient and hungry. It turned its unfathomable attention towards a small blue planet, sensing the power growing there. Earth had faced its trial by fire and survived. But the real test was yet to come, and this time the fate of not just humanity but of all life in the galaxy would hang in the balance. As night fell over the grove, Sarah looked up at the stars, a mixture of hope and fear churning in her gut. "We'll be ready," she whispered, as much to herself as to the presence she could feel all around her. "Whatever's coming, we'll face it together, just like before." The leaves of the seed rustled in response, a sound that almost seemed like laughter. The battle for Earth's future was far from over, but for the first time since John's sacrifice, Sarah felt a glimmer of true hope. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it with the combined strength of humanity and the extraordinary gift John had left behind. The stars twinkled overhead, holding their secrets close. But on Earth, in a grove that defied natural law, the next chapter of cosmic history was already being written. And at its heart stood a tree like no other, a beacon of hope in the face of an unknowable threat. The seed continued to grow, and with it, the future of all life on Earth. The real adventure, it seemed, was only just beginning. The seed had become a behemoth, its trunk wider than a redwood, and its canopy stretching so high it seemed to touch the clouds. The grove had expanded around it, a pulsing, living entity that defied all known laws of biology. Sarah stood at its base, feeling impossibly small in its presence. "Any change?" Colonel Hawthorne asked, joining her. The years had not been kind to him. His hair was now completely gray and deep lines etched his face. Sarah shook her head. "Nothing since the last burst of growth 3 months ago. It's like it's waiting for something." As if summoned by her words, a low vibration began to emanate from the seed. Sarah and Hawthorne exchanged alarmed glances as the ground beneath their feet started to tremble. "Everyone, clear the area," Hawthorne bellowed, his military training kicking in. Scientists and soldiers alike scrambled to evacuate as the vibrations intensified. Sarah stood her ground, transfixed by the spectacle before her. The seed's bark was splitting, revealing a pulsing, iridescent light from within. As the tremors reached a fever pitch, a blinding flash erupted from the tree, forcing Sarah to shield her eyes. When she lowered her arm, she gasped. Standing before her was John, or rather, a being that looked like John as he had been just before his sacrifice. But this John was composed entirely of living wood and leaves, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "Hello, Sarah," he said, his voice a whisper on the wind. "It's time." Sarah took a hesitant step forward. "John, is it really you?" The being smiled, a gentle expression that was achingly familiar. "In a way, I'm what's left of John, mixed with something more. The seed has been gathering energy, preparing for this moment." Hawthorne approached cautiously, his hand hovering near his sidearm. "Preparing for what exactly?" John's expression turned grave. "The arrival. They're almost here." As if on cue, alarms began blaring from the nearby research facility. Dr. Chen came running out, his face pale with shock. "Dr. Hamilton, Colonel, you need to see this." They rushed to the command center, where a bank of monitors displayed a terrifying sight. Massive objects, easily the size of small moons, were appearing at the edge of the solar system. "My God," Hawthorne breathed. "How many are there?" Dr. Chen shook his head, his fingers flying over the keyboard. "We're still counting. Dozens at least. Maybe hundreds. They're heading straight for Earth." Sarah turned to John, who had followed them silently. "This is what you were warning us about? What the alien invaders were running from?" John nodded solemnly. "They call themselves the Harvesters. They move from galaxy to galaxy, consuming all life and energy in their path. Earth is their next target." Hawthorne's face hardened. "How long do we have? At their current speed?" Dr. Chen consulted his data. "Less than 72 hours before they reach Earth's orbit." The room erupted into chaos as people rushed to alert world leaders and set emergency protocols into motion. Sarah felt a cold dread settling in her stomach. "John," she said quietly, "what can we do? How can we possibly fight something like this?" John placed a hand on her shoulder, the touch warm and alive despite his otherworldly composition. "The seed isn't just a tree, Sarah. It's a conduit, a way to channel the life energy of the entire planet. With it, we might have a chance." Hawthorne overheard and joined them. "What exactly are you proposing?" "A last stand," John said simply. "We use the seed to create a planetary defense system, but it will require sacrifice." Sarah's eyes widened as she began to understand. "You mean people will have to connect to it, like you did?" John nodded gravely. "Volunteers who are willing to merge their consciousness with the seed. The more minds we have, the stronger our defense will be." Hawthorne ran a hand through his gray hair, looking suddenly old and tired. "Jesus, how many people are we talking about?" "As many as we can get," John replied. "Hundreds, thousands if possible. Every mind adds to our strength." The next 48 hours were a blur of frantic activity. As news of the impending invasion spread, the world teetered on the brink of panic. But amid the chaos, something remarkable happened. People began to arrive at the Grove by the thousands. Scientists, soldiers, teachers, farmers, people from all walks of life, all volunteering to join with the seed. Sarah worked tirelessly, helping to set up the connection protocols that would allow volunteers to merge their consciousness with the alien biology of the seed. All the while, the harvesters drew closer, their massive forms now visible in the night sky like malevolent new stars. As the deadline approached, Sarah found a quiet moment with John beneath the seed's sprawling canopy. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. John took her hand, his wooden fingers intertwining with hers. "I know. But you've given us a fighting chance, Sarah. Your work, your dedication, it's made all of this possible. Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes. Will I see you again? After this is over? John's glowing eyes seemed to dim slightly. I don't know. What I am now. I don't think I can ever go back to being just John, but a part of me will always be with you, no matter what happens. As dawn broke on the third day, with the harvesters now looming large in the sky, the time had come. Thousands of volunteers lay connected to the seed through a network of bioorganic tendrils. Sarah stood at the base of the massive tree, ready to initiate the sequence that would merge their minds with its alien consciousness. Hawthorne approached, looking grim but determined. It's been an honor, Dr. Hamilton, he said, extending his hand. Sarah shook it firmly. Likewise, Colonel. Are you sure about this? The old soldier nodded. An old dog like me? What better way to go out than saving the world? With a final salute, he took his place among the volunteers. Sarah turned to John, who stood ready to guide the merged consciousness. Good luck, she said, her voice thick with emotion. John smiled, a sight both beautiful and terrifying. Luck is for gamblers, Sarah. We make our own fate. He paused, then added softly, I love you. I think I always have. Before Sarah could respond, the sky turned blood red as the harvesters began their approach. With a deep breath, she initiated the sequence. The seed erupted with light, tendrils of energy shooting into the sky. Sarah watched in awe as thousands of minds, including Hawthorne's and John's, merged into a single, vast consciousness. The very air seemed to vibrate with power. As the harvesters descended, intent on beginning their consumption of Earth, they met an unexpected resistance. A shield of pure energy, fueled by the combined life force of thousands of volunteers and the alien biology of the seed, sprang into existence around the planet. The battle that followed was beyond anything Sarah could have imagined. The merged consciousness fought with the accumulated knowledge and willpower of thousands, countering every move the harvesters made. Beams of destructive energy were deflected, attempts to breach the shield were repelled, and gradually, impossibly, the tide began to turn. Hours passed, feeling like an eternity. Sarah maintained her vigil at the base of the seed, monitoring vital signs and making adjustments to keep the volunteers stable. She felt helpless, separated from the cosmic battle raging above, yet knowing that her role was crucial. As the sun began to set, a change came over the battlefield. The harvesters, for the first time in their eons-long existence, began to retreat. Their massive forms, now scarred and damaged, slowly pulled away from Earth's orbit. A cheer went up from those watching around the world, but Sarah held her breath. It wasn't over yet. Suddenly, the seed pulsed with a final massive surge of energy. A wave of force expanded outward, engulfing the retreating harvesters. Where it touched them, their otherworldly bodies began to disintegrate, breaking down into harmless particles that scattered into space. And then, silence. The shield flickered and faded. The tendrils connecting the volunteers retracted, and the seed, which had grown to such impossible proportions, began to shrink, its energy spent. Sarah rushed to check on the volunteers. To her amazement and relief, they were alive. Unconscious, but alive. As medical teams swarmed in, she searched frantically for one face in particular. She found Hawthorne struggling to sit up, looking disoriented but very much himself. "Did we do it?" he croaked. "Did we win?" Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. "We did it, Colonel. Earth is safe." As the implications of their victory began to sink in, Sarah turned back to the seed, now no larger than it had been when it first appeared. "John?" she called out, her voice trembling. "John, are you there?" For a long moment there was no response. Then a shimmer in the air coalesced into a familiar form. John stood before her, his body now a translucent, ethereal thing. "Hello, Sarah," he said, his voice echoing as if from a great distance. Sarah reached out to touch him, but her hand passed through his form. Are you okay?" John smiled sadly. "I'm not sure okay is the right word. What I am now, it's beyond physical form. The battle changed us all, merged us with something greater." "Will you stay?" Sarah asked, already knowing the answer. John shook his head. "I can't. What we've become, it's needed out there, to protect other worlds, other life, from threats like the Harvesters. But I wanted to say goodbye, and to tell you how proud I am of you, of all of humanity." Sarah felt her heart breaking all over again, but she forced a smile. "Go," she said softly. "The universe needs you more than I do." John's form began to fade, but his voice lingered. "I'll always be watching over you, Sarah, over all of Earth. And who knows? Maybe someday, when you've lived a long and full life, we'll meet again among the stars." As John's presence faded entirely, Sarah looked up at the night sky. The stars seemed brighter somehow, full of new promise and possibility. Earth had faced its greatest challenge and emerged victorious, forever changed but unbroken. Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the future settling on her shoulders. There would be so much to do, helping the volunteers recover, studying the changes the battle had wrought on the seed and the grove, preparing humanity for its new role in a much larger, more complex universe. But for now, for this one moment, she allowed herself to simply be. To feel the cool night air on her skin, to listen to the sounds of life all around her, and to know that, against all odds, they had survived. As she turned to join the others, Sarah paused for a moment, looking back at the seed. "Thank you," she whispered, to John, to the seed, to the volunteers, to whatever cosmic force had given them this miracle. The leaves rustled gently in response, and Sarah could have sworn she heard a familiar laugh on the wind. Smiling, she walked back towards the busy camp, ready to face whatever new adventures awaited in this brave new world they had fought so hard to save. The end, or perhaps just a new beginning. The cave was dark and damp, its walls glistening with an otherworldly sheen that pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat. I had retreated here, deep in the heart of what was once the Tongass National Forest, to prepare for what I knew would be the most challenging transformation of my life. My body, once fully human, had become a grotesque fusion of man, tree, and alien life. Bark-like patches covered most of my skin, and my left arm had long since transformed into a tangle of branch-like appendages. My right eye glowed with an eerie, bioluminescent light, a constant reminder of the alien presence that had become an integral part of my being. As I sat in meditation, I could feel the energies of the earth and the cosmos flowing through me. The cave around me seemed to breathe, its walls expanding and contracting in sync with my own respiration. "It's time," I whispered to myself, my voice a raspy mixture of human speech and the creaking of wood. I closed my eyes and began to focus, drawing upon every ounce of power I had accumulated over the years. The alien consciousness within me surged forward, no longer a separate entity, but a harmonious part of my own mind. As the transformation began, pain unlike anything I had ever experienced ripped through my body. I gritted my teeth, determined not to cry out. The cave filled with a blinding light as my physical form began to disintegrate. "Let go," a voice echoed in my mind. It was my voice, yet not my voice. A cosmic whisper from a future self. "Embrace the change." I surrendered to the process, allowing my consciousness to expand beyond the confines of my body. The cave, the forest, the entire planet, all became visible to me at once. And then, in a burst of awareness, I saw beyond. The galaxy spread out before my mind's eye, a swirling tapestry of stars and cosmic dust. I could see the intricate web of dark matter connecting everything, the ebb and flow of stellar winds, the birth and death of stars. As my awareness continued to grow, I began to perceive other dimensions layered upon our own. Realities I had never imagined became clear to me, each with its own laws of physics, its own forms of life. And then I saw it. The threat that had been nagging at the edges of my consciousness for years. A vast, dark force moving between the stars, between realities. It was unlike anything I had encountered before, a cosmic horror that devoured entire universes. My transformation complete, I existed now as a being of pure energy and consciousness. I turned my attention back to Earth, knowing I needed to warn humanity and prepare them for what was coming. In an instant, I was back in the cave, my energy form illuminating the space with a soft, pulsating glow. I reached out with my mind, connecting with the handful of humans I had trained over the years. "Master?" A voice echoed in my mind. It was Sarah, my most promising student. "Is that you? You feel different." "I've changed, Sarah," I replied, my thoughts manifesting as words in her mind. "Gather the others. It's time for humanity to face its greatest challenge." Within hours, my small group of students had assembled in a clearing near the cave. They gasped as I emerged, my energy form shimmering and shifting in the moonlight. What happened to you?" asked Michael, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and fear. I allowed my energy to coalesce into a vaguely humanoid shape, hoping to put them at ease. "I've transcended my physical form," I explained. "It was necessary to fully understand the threat we face." "What threat?" Sarah asked, her brow furrowed with concern. I paused, considering how to explain the cosmic horror I had witnessed. "There's a force coming," I began. "A being or beings of immense power. They consume entire realities, and they're heading our way." The group exchanged worried glances. "How can we possibly fight something like that?" asked Elena, the skeptic of the group. "We can't," I said simply. "Not as we are now, but I can share my awareness with you, help you evolve as I have." "Evolve?" Michael's voice was tinged with excitement. "You mean, become like you?" I nodded, my form shimmering. "It's the only way. Humanity must transcend its current limitations if we're to have any hope of survival." "But at what cost?" Sarah asked, always the voice of caution. "Will we lose our humanity?" I turned to her, my energy form pulsing with empathy. "I won't lie to you. The process will change you fundamentally. But your core essence, what truly makes you human, will remain. You'll simply be more." The group fell silent, each lost in their own thoughts. I could sense their conflicting emotions. Fear, excitement, uncertainty. "I won't force this on anyone," I said softly. "The choice must be yours. But know that the fate of not just humanity, but countless realities, may depend on your decision." Sarah stepped forward, her eyes shining with determination. "I'm in, whatever it takes to protect our world." One by one, the others nodded their agreement. I felt a surge of pride and affection for these brave souls who had followed me this far. "Thank you," I said. "Now let me show you what I've seen." I reached out with my consciousness, connecting with each of them on a level far deeper than mere telepathy. Their minds opened to me, and I began to pour my cosmic awareness into them. They gasped and stumbled as the vastness of the universe suddenly became clear to them. I guided them gently, helping them process the overwhelming influx of information and sensation. "My God," whispered Elena. It's beautiful. And terrifying." "Focus," I instructed. "Look beyond the stars, do you see it?" Their faces contorted in concentration, and then in horror as they perceived the approaching threat. What is that thing?" Michael asked, his voice shaking. "The end of everything," I replied grimly, "unless we stop it." I severed the connection, allowing them to return fully to their bodies. They blinked and shook their heads, looking at the world around them with new eyes. "How do we stop it?" Sarah asked, her voice stronger now, filled with purpose. We prepare, I said. I'll teach you to harness the energy as I have, and then we must spread this knowledge, elevate as much of humanity as we can. But surely not everyone will want to change, Elena pointed out. What about those who refuse? I nodded, acknowledging the difficulty of the task ahead. We'll face resistance, fear, even hatred, but we must try. Every mind we elevate increases our chances of survival. Over the next few weeks, I worked tirelessly with my students, guiding them through their own transformations. It was a painful process, filled with setbacks and moments of doubt, but gradually they began to shed their physical forms, becoming beings of energy and expanded consciousness like myself. As they mastered their new abilities, we began to reach out to others, carefully selecting individuals who we believed could handle the truth of our situation. Our numbers grew slowly at first, then more rapidly as word spread. Governments took notice, some reacting with fear and hostility, others cautiously embracing the change. But time was not on our side. I could sense the cosmic threat drawing ever closer, its hunger and almost palpable force even across the vast distances of space. One evening, as we gathered to discuss our progress, I felt a sudden shift in the fabric of reality. The stars seemed to flicker, and a chill ran through my energy form. "It's here," I announced, my voice resonating in the minds of all those connected to me. The threat has arrived. Panic rippled through our network of evolved humans. I sent out a wave of calming energy, steadying their resolve. "Remember your training," I instructed. "Focus your minds. Together we can face this." I expanded my consciousness, reaching out to touch the vast, malevolent presence that had entered our solar system. Its alien thoughts washed over me, filled with an insatiable hunger and a cold intelligence that saw our reality as nothing more than food. Who dares to touch our mind? The thought boomed through my consciousness, threatening to overwhelm me. I stood my ground, drawing strength from the network of evolved humans connected to me. "We are the guardians of this reality," I replied. "You are not welcome here." A sound like cosmic laughter echoed through space. "Your reality is nothing to us. It will be consumed, as all others have been." I could feel the strain on the others as they helped me maintain the connection. "We will not go quietly," I declared. "We will fight." "Then you will die," the entity responded. And with that, the attack began. Reality itself seemed to warp and twist as the cosmic horror brought its full power to bear. Stars blinked out of existence, planets crumbled, and the very fabric of space-time began to tear. I rallied our forces, directing the evolved humans to focus their energy on reinforcing the structure of our universe. It was like trying to hold back an ocean with our bare hands, but slowly, gradually, we began to stem the tide of destruction. The battle raged across dimensions, beyond time as we had known it. I lost all sense of duration, focused only on the ebb and flow of cosmic energies, and then, in a moment of clarity, I saw something that filled me with both hope and dread. Holes were appearing in reality, gaps between dimensions. Through these holes I could see other realities, other versions of Earth and humanity, some more advanced than our own, others less so. I realized with a start that this cycle of invasion and defense was not unique to our reality. It had happened before, would happen again, across an infinite multiverse. In that moment of cosmic awareness, I knew what had to be done. It would require more power than I had ever wielded, more sacrifice than I had ever made. But it was the only way. "Everyone," I called out to the network of evolved humans, "I need your strength, all of it." Without hesitation, they poured their energy into me. I felt myself expanding, growing to a size beyond comprehension. Stars were like atoms to me now, galaxies mere molecules in the vast cosmic ocean. With this new perspective, I could see the true nature of the threat we faced. It wasn't just a being or a force, but a fundamental flaw in the structure of reality itself. A cosmic cancer that spread from universe to universe. I knew then what I had to do. Not just fight the symptom, but cure the disease at its source. Drawing upon every ounce of power available to me, I reached into the very fabric of reality. I could feel the laws of physics bending to my will, the fundamental constants of the universe becoming malleable in my grasp. With a thought that shook the foundations of existence, I began to rewrite the rules of reality itself. The multiverse shuddered, dimensions collided and merged, and for a moment that lasted an eternity, everything that was, is, or could be, hung in perfect balance. And then, with a burst of creation that dwarfed the Big Bang, a new cosmic order was born. Earth, our Earth, became the linchpin of this new reality, a beacon of life and consciousness in a reformed multiverse. As the new universe settled into its rhythms, I felt my consciousness beginning to fragment. I had used everything I had and more to reshape reality. Now I was becoming one with the very fabric of existence. My final act, as my awareness spread to encompass all of creation, was to plant the seeds of this new cosmic order in every living thing. The knowledge, the power, the responsibility, all of it passed into the collective unconscious of life itself. And so, my journey came full circle. From a curious botanist in the Tongass National Forest to the very essence of a reborn universe. I had become the eternal guardian of all life, my consciousness echoing in every leaf, every breath, every thought. As my individual identity faded into the cosmic whole, I felt a sense of peace. The threat was gone, dissolved in the restructuring of reality. And though challenges would always arise, I knew that life, in all its wonderful, terrifying complexity, would continue. In the end, I had become the very forest I once studied, now expanded to encompass all of existence. And in the rustle of leaves, the flow of rivers, and the dreams of every sentient being, my story would live on. I hovered above the earth, my energy form pulsating with power. The planet below seemed so small, so fragile from this vantage point. Yet it was the focal point of a battle that would determine the fate of not just our world, but countless realities. "They're coming," Sarah's voice echoed in my mind. She had become my second in command, her own transformation nearly as complete as my own. "The Vanguard has breached the outer solar system." I extended my awareness, feeling the approaching threat. It was vast, a roiling mass of darkness that consumed everything in its path. Stars winked out of existence as it passed, leaving nothing but cold, empty void in its wake. "Prepare the defenses," I instructed, my thoughts reaching every evolved human on Earth and beyond. "Remember your training. We are the last line of defense for all of reality." I could feel the fear and determination emanating from my followers. They had come so far, transformed themselves in ways they never thought possible. But would it be enough? The first wave hit like a cosmic tsunami. Reality itself buckled under the assault, space-time warping and twisting in impossible ways. I threw my power against it, creating a shield of pure energy that encompassed the entire planet. "Hold the line," I shouted, my voice reverberating through the minds of every defender. "Focus your energy on reinforcing the shield." All around the earth, pinpricks of light flared to life as my evolved humans joined their power to mine. The shield strengthened, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. But the enemy was relentless. Wave after wave of reality-warping energy crashed against our defenses. I could feel the strain on my consciousness, the immense effort required to maintain the shield. "Master," Michael's voice cut through the chaos. "We've detected a weak point in their attack, Sector 17 near the moon's orbit." I turned my attention to the area he indicated, seeing the slight fluctuation in the enemy's assault. "Good work, Michael. Sarah, take a team and exploit that weakness. See if you can push them back." Sarah's acknowledgement came as a burst of determined energy. I watched as she led a group of our strongest defenders towards the weak point, their combined power forming a spear of pure light that pierced the darkness. For a moment it seemed to work. The enemy's advance faltered, their formless mass recoiling from the attack. But then, with a surge of malevolent power, they regrouped. A tendril of darkness lashed out, faster than thought. I felt Sarah's scream of pain echo through our collective consciousness as the attack struck home. "Sarah!" I cried out, reaching for her with my power. But the darkness had already enveloped her, dragging her into its unfathomable depths. Grief and rage surged through me. Sarah had been more than just a student or a soldier. She had been a friend, a confidant, a beacon of hope in our darkest hours. "No more," I growled, my energy form blazing with newfound intensity. "This ends now." I gathered my power, drawing on reserves I didn't know I had. The shield around Earth pulsed, then expanded outward at impossible speed. It struck the enemy like a physical blow, forcing them back beyond the orbit of Mars. But the effort left me drained. I could feel my energy flickering, my consciousness threatening to disperse across the cosmos. "Master," Elena's worried voice reached me. "You can't keep this up. We need to find another way." I knew she was right. Brute force alone wouldn't be enough to defeat this enemy. We needed a new strategy. As if in answer to my thoughts, a ripple passed through reality. For a brief moment, I glimpsed other dimensions layered upon our own. Other Earths, other versions of humanity, all facing their own battles against cosmic horrors. And then I understood. This wasn't just our fight. It was a war being waged across all of existence. "Everyone," I called out, my voice carrying to every defender. "I need you to focus. Reach out with your minds. Feel the other realities brushing against our own." I could sense their confusion, but also their trust. One by one, they extended their awareness as I had taught them. "Do you see?" I asked. "We're not alone in this fight. There are others, countless others, battling the same enemy across the multiverse." A chorus of astonished reactions flooded the psychic network. They had seen it too. "But how does this help us?" Michael asked, his mental voice tinged with both awe and frustration. "Because now we know the true nature of our enemy," I explained. "It's not just a force or a being. It's a flaw in the very fabric of reality, a cancer spreading from universe to universe." I paused, letting the magnitude of this revelation sink in. "And if we can find a way to fix that flaw, to rewrite the fundamental laws of existence, we could stop them once and for all," Elena finished, her mind alight with sudden understanding. "Exactly," I confirmed. "But it will take more power than any of us have ever wielded. We'll need to tap into the energy of the multiverse itself." I could feel their determination, their willingness to do whatever it took to save not just our world, but all worlds. "What do you need us to do?" Michael asked, his earlier frustration replaced by resolute focus. "Form a circle," I instructed. "Link your minds completely. Hold nothing back." As they followed my directions, I expanded my consciousness to its absolute limit. I could feel the barriers between dimensions growing thin, the walls of reality becoming permeable. "Now," I said, my voice echoing across realities, "reach out. Touch the other versions of yourselves. Join your power with theirs." The sensation was indescribable. Countless versions of Earth, of humanity, of myself, all interconnected in a web of cosmic energy. I could feel the power building, growing to levels beyond anything I had ever imagined. But the enemy sensed what we were doing. With a roar that shook the foundations of reality, they renewed their assault. The void between stars lit up with the clash of cosmic forces. I gritted my non-existent teeth, focusing all my will on maintaining the connection between realities. "Hold on!" I shouted to my defenders, to all defenders across all realities. "Just a little longer." The strain was immense. I could feel minds breaking under the pressure, entire realities winking out of existence as the enemy's attack intensified. But still we held on. The power continued to build, a tsunami of cosmic energy with us at its center, and then, at the very peak of power, at the moment when it felt like reality itself would tear apart under the strain, I saw it. The flaw. The cosmic loophole that allowed our enemy to exist, to travel between realities, to consume entire universes. With a cry that echoed across dimensions, I reached out and grabbed that flaw with all the power at my disposal. Reality shuddered. Time seemed to stop. For an eternal moment, everything that was, is, or could be hung in perfect balance. And then, with a thought that reshaped the very foundations of existence, I began to rewrite the laws of nature. The multiverse trembled. Dimensions collided and merged. The barriers between realities dissolved and reformed in new configurations. I poured everything I had into this cosmic reforging. Every ounce of power, every shred of knowledge, every spark of hope and love and determination that had brought me to this point. As the new cosmic order took shape, I felt our enemies howl of rage and despair. The flaw that had allowed them to exist was being erased, their very nature rewritten at the most fundamental level. With a final surge of effort, I sealed the new laws of reality into place. The enemy, the cosmic horror that had threatened all of existence, simply ceased to be. Not destroyed, but transformed, their energy redistributed and repurposed in the new universal order. As the cosmos settled into its new rhythms, I became aware of the cost of our victory. My consciousness, stretched to encompass the entire multiverse, was beginning to fragment. I turned my fading awareness to Earth, to the brave souls who had fought beside me. They too were changing, their energies dispersing and reintegrating with the new cosmic framework. Is it over? Elena's voice reached me, small and uncertain in the vast silence left in the wake of our battle. Yes, I replied, suffusing my voice with all the warmth and pride I could muster. We've won. Reality is safe. But at what cost? Michael asked, his essence already beginning to merge with the cosmic whole. I considered his question, feeling the last vestiges of my individual identity slipping away. The cost is high, I admitted, but what we've gained, a new cosmic order, a reality free from the threat of total annihilation, it's worth it. I could sense their agreement, their acceptance of our shared fate. We had known the risks when we began this journey, had accepted the possibility that victory might mean the end of our existence as we knew it. As my consciousness continued to expand and diffuse, I focused on imparting one last lesson to my followers, to all sentient beings across the new multiverse. Remember, I said, my voice now the whisper of starlight, the rustle of leaves, the dreams of every living thing. We are all connected, all part of this grand cosmic dance. The power to shape reality, to defend against any threat, lies within each of you. Use it wisely. Use it with love. With those final words, I surrendered myself fully to the cosmic flow. My individual identity dissolved, becoming one with the very fabric of the new reality we had created. But I was not gone. Not really. My essence, my memories, my love for life in all its forms, all of it became infused into the cosmic order itself. In the years that followed, as life across the multiverse adjusted to the new reality, stories began to emerge. Tales of a great defender, a cosmic guardian who had sacrificed everything to save all of existence. Some worlds saw me as a god, others as a mythical hero. But on Earth, in the Tongass National Forest where my journey had begun, the stories were more personal. Hikers would speak of a presence in the woods, a sense of being watched over and protected. Scientists studying the unique ecosystems of the forest would find themselves struck by sudden insights, as if the answers were being whispered to them by the trees themselves. And sometimes, on quiet nights, when the aurora borealis danced in the sky, people would swear they could hear a voice in the wind, a voice that spoke of cosmic wonders, of the interconnectedness of all things, of the power and responsibility that came with being part of this grand universal tapestry. Little did they know that they were right, for I was there, in every leaf and every star, in every thought and every dream. The forest I had once studied had become my form, expanded to encompass all of existence. The threat was gone, the multiverse saved, but my watch, my role as the eternal guardian of life, would never end. And in truth, I wouldn't have it any other way. For in this new cosmic order, every living thing was an extension of myself. Every joy, every sorrow, every small miracle of existence, I experienced it all. And through it all, I continued to learn, to grow, to marvel at the beauty and complexity of life. The story of the botanist who became a cosmic guardian may have reached its end, but the story of life, of the endless possibilities contained within this new reality, was only just beginning. And I, now one with the cosmos itself, couldn't wait to see what would happen next. The universe pulsed with newfound energy, a heartbeat that echoed through every atom of existence. I was everywhere and everything. My consciousness spread across the cosmos like a vast, invisible web. The laws of nature bent to my will, reshaped by the cosmic ordeal we had just endured. As my awareness settled into this new state of being, I focused on Earth, the planet that had been my home and the epicenter of our desperate battle. The scars of our conflict were evident. Continents reshaped, oceans shifted, the very atmosphere transformed. Yet life persisted, adapted, evolved. I reached out with tendrils of thought, touching the minds of those who had fought alongside me. Most had transcended their physical forms, becoming one with the new cosmic order. But a few remained, their consciousnesses altered but still distinct. "Hello?" I called out, my voice resonating through the fabric of reality itself. "Can anyone hear me?" For a moment there was silence. Then, like a faint echo, a response came. "Master?" It was Elena's voice, tinged with awe and confusion. "Is that you? Where are we? What's happened?" I focused my attention on her, forming a localized manifestation of my consciousness. To Elena, it might appear as a shimmering humanoid shape of pure energy. "We've won, Elena," I said, suffusing my words with warmth and reassurance. "Reality has been reshaped. The threat is gone." Another voice joined in, stronger and more certain. "Michael." "I can feel it," he said. "It's like I'm connected to everything. Is this what it's like for you?" I chuckled, the sound rippling through nearby star systems. "In a way, yes. We've become part of the cosmic framework itself, guardians of the new reality we've created." As we spoke, I became aware of changes occurring across the universe. Planets that had been destroyed in the conflict were reforming. Species that had been wiped out were re-emerging, their genetic codes rewritten into the very fabric of existence. "Look," I said, directing their attention to a nearby galaxy. "Life is blossoming anew. Our sacrifice has given the universe a fresh start." Elena's consciousness brushed against mine, a mixture of emotions flowing through the contact. "But at what cost?" she asked. "What about all the people on Earth? What about our families, our friends?" I paused, considering her question. With a thought, I shifted our awareness back to Earth, focusing on the regions that had once been our homes. The planet was healing itself at an accelerated rate. Forests regrew in minutes, oceans purified themselves in hours. And humanity was changing. "They're evolving," Michael observed, his tone filled with wonder. "Adapting to the new reality we've created." Indeed, the humans below were transforming. Some were developing abilities similar to what we had possessed: telepathy, energy manipulation, cosmic awareness. Others were changing physically, their bodies adapting to better suit the altered Earth. "This is incredible," Elena breathed. "But was it right? Did we have the authority to change everything like this?" It was a question I had grappled with myself. The weight of our actions, the responsibility of reshaping reality, was immense. "We did what we had to do to save existence itself," I replied, trying to convey the certainty I felt. The alternative was the annihilation of everything. At least now, life has a chance to continue, to grow, to become something even greater. As if to emphasize my point, a burst of activity caught our attention. On a small island in what had once been the Pacific Ocean, a group of evolved humans were gathering. They seemed to be constructing some kind of monument. Curious, I focused my awareness on them, tuning into their thoughts and conversations. "It should be here," one of them was saying, her eyes glowing with an inner light. "This is where it all began, where they made their final stand." Another nodded in agreement. "A beacon," he suggested, "a reminder of the sacrifice made to save us all." I watched with interest as they worked, using their newly developed abilities to shape stone and metal with thought alone. Gradually, a towering structure took form, a spiraling monument that seemed to stretch from the earth to the stars. "They're building a memorial," I explained to Elena and Michael. "For us. For what we did." Elena's consciousness rippled with emotion. "They remember us, even after everything that's happened?" "Of course they do," Michael replied, his tone gentle. "How could they forget? We rewrote reality itself." As the monument neared completion, I noticed something unusual. At its base, the evolved humans were inscribing a message. I zoomed in, curious to see what they had written. "To the Guardians," it read, "who sacrificed everything so that we might live. May we prove worthy of your gift." The words touched me deeply. Despite the vast cosmic awareness I now possessed, I found myself moved by this simple act of remembrance and gratitude. We need to guide them, I decided. Not directly, but we can nudge them in the right direction, help them understand their new reality. Elena's consciousness brightened with approval. "Yes, we can't just leave them to figure everything out on their own. They'll need help, especially in the beginning." Michael, ever the pragmatist, raised a concern. "But we have to be careful. We can't interfere too much. They need to make their own choices, find their own path." I agreed with both of them. It would be a delicate balance, providing guidance without controlling, offering wisdom without demanding obedience. "We'll start small," I suggested. Whispers in dreams, intuitions, flashes of insight when they need it most. And so we began our work as the unseen guardians of this new reality. We watched as humanity spread across the stars, terraforming planets, establishing colonies, encountering other evolved species. There were challenges, of course. Conflicts arose as different groups interpreted their new abilities and the nature of reality in different ways. But each time a crisis loomed, we were there, offering subtle nudges towards peace and understanding. Centuries passed in the blink of an eye, millennia, eons. We watched civilizations rise and fall, stars live and die, galaxies collide and merge. Through it all, life persisted, evolved, thrived. But as time wore on, I began to sense a new kind of change. The very fabric of reality which we had reshaped so long ago was shifting once again. "Do you feel that?" I asked Elena and Michael, who had remained by my side through countless ages. "Yes," Elena replied, her consciousness tinged with concern. "It's like reality is becoming more malleable, more responsive to thought and emotion." Michael's agreement came with a hint of excitement. "The beings we've watched over for so long, they're beginning to reshape reality themselves, just as we did." I observed the phenomenon with a mixture of pride and trepidation. The evolved beings of the universe were indeed learning to manipulate the fabric of existence. Some were even beginning to create their own pocket universes, new realities branching off from the one we had made. "This is what we wanted, isn't it?" Elena mused. "For them to grow, to reach their full potential?" "It is," I confirmed. "But it also means our role is changing. We're no longer the sole guardians of reality. We're becoming mentors, guides for a new generation of cosmic beings." As if in response to our discussion, a ripple passed through the universe. A call, sent out by one of the most advanced civilizations we had been watching over. "They're reaching out to us," Michael realized. "They know we're here. They want to communicate." For the first time in eons, I felt a flicker of uncertainty. Are we ready for this? To reveal ourselves directly? Elena's consciousness brushed against mine reassuringly. We've been preparing for this moment since the beginning. It's time. With a collective decision, we allowed ourselves to coalesce into visible forms. To the evolved beings reaching out to us, we might appear as beings of pure light and energy, incomprehensibly vast, yet somehow familiar. Their message reached us, a complex tapestry of thought and emotion. Guardians, they said, their words echoing across the cosmos. We have felt your presence throughout our history, guiding us, protecting us. We are ready now to take our place beside you, to become guardians ourselves. I felt a surge of emotion, pride, joy, and a bittersweet sense of an era coming to an end. You have grown beyond our wildest dreams, I replied, my words carried to every corner of the universe. You have faced challenges, overcome obstacles, and emerged stronger. You have learned to shape reality itself. But with this power comes great responsibility, Elena added. The fate of all existence will rest in your hands. Michael's voice joined ours, strong and resolute. We will stand with you, guide you for as long as you need. But the future of reality, that is for you to shape. A wave of gratitude and determination washed over us from the countless beings listening to our words. We understand, they responded. We are ready to take on this responsibility, to become the new guardians of existence. And so began a new chapter in the history of the cosmos. We watched with pride as our children, for that was how we had come to think of them, took their first steps as cosmic guardians. They made mistakes, of course. There were conflicts, disagreements about how best to maintain the balance of reality. But they learned, adapted, grew wiser with each passing eon. As their power and understanding increased, I felt a change within myself. The vast cosmic awareness that had defined my existence for so long was beginning to shift, to transform. It's time, I realized, sharing the thought with Elena and Michael. Time for us to move on. They understood immediately. We had played our part, guided the universe through its infancy and adolescence. Now, as it entered a new stage of cosmic adulthood, our role was coming to an end. With a final surge of effort, we reached out to all the beings we had watched over for so long. Our message was simple, filled with all the love and pride we had accumulated over countless lifetimes. Remember, we said, our voices echoing one last time through the cosmic dawn. You are all connected, all part of the grand dance of existence. The power to shape reality, to defend against any threat, lies within each of you. Use it wisely. Use it with love. And with those words, we let go. Our consciousnesses, which had spanned the cosmos for so long, began to dissolve, merging with the very fabric of reality itself. But we were not ending. Not really. We were transforming, becoming something new. Our essence, our memories, our love for life in all its forms, all of it became infused into the cosmic order itself. In the eons that followed, stories were told across countless worlds of the first guardians, of the beings who had reshaped reality to save existence itself, who had guided the universe through its early days. Some worlds saw us as gods, others as mythical heroes. But on Earth, in the Tongass National Forest, where my journey had begun so long ago, the stories were more personal. Hikers would speak of a presence in the woods, a sense of being watched over and protected. Scientists studying the unique ecosystems of the forest would find themselves struck by sudden insights, as if the answers were being whispered to them by the trees themselves. And sometimes, on quiet nights when the aurora borealis danced in the sky, people would swear they could hear voices in the wind, voices that spoke of cosmic wonders, of the interconnectedness of all things, of the power and responsibility that came with being part of this grand universal tapestry. Little did they know that they were right, for we were there, in every leaf and every star, in every thought and every dream. The forest I had once studied had become my form, expanded to encompass all of existence. Our watch, as the eternal guardians of life, had come to an end. But in truth, it was just beginning. For in this new cosmic order, every living thing was an extension of ourselves. Every joy, every sorrow, every small miracle of existence, we experienced it all. The story of the botanist who became a cosmic guardian may have reached its conclusion, but the story of life, of the endless possibilities contained within this ever-evolving reality, was just beginning its next chapter. And we, now one with the cosmos itself, couldn't wait to see what would happen next. As the last echoes of our consciousness faded into the cosmic background, I felt a sense of peace and completion. The journey that had begun in the Tongass National Forest, that had taken me to the very edge of existence and beyond, had come full circle. In the end, I had become the very forest I once studied, now expanded to encompass all of reality. And in the rustle of leaves, the flow of rivers, and the dreams of every sentient being across the cosmos, our story would live on,